Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Hearthstone. Today is Friday, May 24th. Yesterday, the second week of the solo adventure happened, in case you didn't see that. I succeeded at doing Chapter 3, and then spent the rest of the day failing at finishing Chapter 2. And this is very typical for my experiences in solo adventures in general. I remember specifically the Frozen Throne requires you to beat the final boss with all 9 of the hero classes. That took me at least 4 to 6 months to finally get done because A, I didn't care to actually get it done, and B, it's just too difficult on some hero classes. And the way the Delirian Heights DLC solo adventure is set up, where it's unlocking different hero classes per week, I wouldn't be surprised if week 4 unlocks the 2 best classes that makes it really easy to beat the bosses. So yeah, yesterday was kind of a waste of time, or maybe not so much a waste of time as just a annoyance. But in the meantime, since I was doing that, I didn't get any more recording done of the Doom reboot, which is kind of fun. I unlocked, in the last recording I made of Doom, a original map, and it's the 3D models of the hero character and the enemy characters still look like the modern 3D models, but the wall textures are old wall textures, and it just looks hideous. It's just horribly ugly and not what I would have wanted. I would have wanted them to just change the wall textures also, so none of it really looked like the original Doom game since it's so old, and instead I would have just wanted it to have the same location, item, level layout. I'd also say, regardless of where you find the first secret should always unlock the first level of episode 1 of Doom 1, and then the second secret should unlock the second level of episode 1 of Doom 1, or maybe the first secret unlocks all the levels of episode 1 Doom 1. There's a lot more levels between Doom 1 and its 4 episodes in Doom 2 than there are 3D levels of the Doom reboot, so you could have handed out quite a few extra levels for different reasons. I guess today we're going to be playing Paladin cards and Warlock cards, and I guess we can't really abandon we can't really abandon too much, so we'll just have to continue playing ranked, even if it means we're gonna knock ourselves down in the ranking. Because if I start getting precious with only playing ranked when I'm really gonna try and win, or when I'm playing a hero deck that has a good chance of winning, I'll never get that 500 ranked wins for what little that's worth.
Versus Rexar.
Let the hunt begin. Your soul shall be mine.
The Doom reboot is losing me as far as how much I'd want to play it. I think there's very possibly only 3 more levels, but each level is taking somewhere close to 2 hours to play. It feels like 2 hours at least. Like, I go 45 minutes in one episode, 45 minutes in another episode. That's an hour and a half, and then I might go a third 45 minutes before I finish a level, which would be 2 hours and 15 minutes. So I might be a little off, but not by much. So yeah, when you see what they have to offer, and the level design in the modern levels are all just multiplayer map levels, and they all kind of suck, and they all feel like they're just really simplistic tutorial just to rush you into playing multiplayer, but there is no multiplayer to play now because there's nobody else online playing it. It basically pushes the Doom reboot to be a dead game that barely has a justification to even be on sale. Like if you take the multiplayer completely out of the game and the snap map level design completely out of the game, you're just left with the single player, and the single player is not as meaty of an experience. Maybe the arcade mode, which I haven't touched yet, does something to fix that, but as I'm seeing it now, I'm gonna look over here on the side of my screen to make sure my system is working. Yes, it is. So yeah, let's see. Speaking of Doom, id Software retweeted Doom, our art for Doom Eternal. I'm also a little afraid because I was in a level in hell in the Doom reboot, and then it sent me after that level back to Mars, and I'm wondering if that means they did all this texturing and art design for the hell world for one level, and the rest of it is going to take place in Mars, or if it's gonna, it kind of needs to jump back and forth between the two for the rest of the game, because and probably in between each level. Like, I wouldn't be upset if there were just portals where you would walk through a doorway and you'd be in the hell section, and then you'd walk through another portal and you're back in Mars, and the two maps are just cut and paste together. But I said the exact same thing when we got into the hell level also, is that if you don't go back to the previous world, then all the art and texture design would be pointless in that case too. So yeah, the game just does not feel long enough to have two complete collections of textures. That's what you would want to see in a game, but the main thing I want to see is just more level, more game, more story, more of everything. It really comes off and makes it feel like Bethesda told id Tech they had to make a Doom game, when id Tech probably didn't want to make a Doom game, and they just wanted to continuously, permanently for all eternity, work on their id Tech engine. I think that's pretty much exactly how it breaks down, and the id Tech engine still showing that it's not really even on par with Unreal. If I did some research, I kind of think that Doom Eternal, which I kind of think is the sequel, which I'm pretty sure is the sequel to the Doom reboot, is going to be made on Unreal. But one thing did happen when we exited back into the main menu to look at the collectibles. None of the collectibles were visible. They weren't loading in. So I was just staring at a blank screen.
Back to the void. Job's done.
There we go. Let's see. E3 starts June 11th through the 13th in Los Angeles, so we've got several more weeks of E3 slump, and they really did take an entire month off before E3 to announce anything really, or and I seriously doubt they're going to. I'm gonna run into a bunch of items. So I'm gonna kill 2 of these so I can do this. And do that. Then that.
Back to the void.
And that. Then we'll switch. There you go. I'm probably not playing very good. Trying to warm up here. So we still are getting a lot of games that are coming out on Steam that are Chinese games. I don't know if this is ever going to change, quite frankly, because now that they've gone through the effort to go through the process of filing, paying the $100 and putting it on Steam Direct, I don't see a real reason short of the Chinese government directly telling them not to. I think this may be the new future, is that we will always get Chinese games and they will always be heavily weighted in being cheap Chinese games. So I just want to come out and say, no, this isn't intentional. There were a few games I looked at that looked bad that I chose not to highlight and look at today. But if anything, I would say Chinese games look enough like Japanese games, and I probably do. I almost certainly do have a bit of a fandom for Japanese games, so that causes me to look at Chinese games and catches my eye, and then I am usually disappointed when it turns out to be a cheap one.
Your soul shall be mine.
So yeah,
Nightmare.
a few months ago it was a very different experience going through all the Steam games. There was a lot of low effort Western games. If anything, I would say the Chinese games have pushed out the low effort Western games quite a bit. We're seeing a little bit less of those. So with that, since today's Friday, I want to kind of just burn through the news. I say this every stream, like this is becoming my motto. I want to burn through the news and have a shorter experience. We have a game here called Polyfuru featuring Miya Kimono, and it's in what looks like Japanese, but might be Chinese. It is 15% off for $15.29. It is actually Japanese. This is a dancing game. Let's see, I think. So it's kind of like a rhythm game. And you have to have, I think, VR. Yeah.
Almost out of time.
So you're swinging your red and blue baton in musical synchronization. These are a new thing to me, certainly, but probably not super new to Japanese people. I know Japanese people they go to these virtual character or anime music concerts do have glowing light sticks that they wave as a form of audience participation, and they've been making games that work in a similar way. Let's see. Just do that. But as a game, and particularly as a VR game, I don't see how I could play this because it's pretty simplistic. It's not complicated enough like Beat Saber, which would be about the equivalent of it. And you run into the same problem with any music software, which is the music will get copyright content ID claimed. I don't know if I mentioned it, but a popular Minecraft player, Mumbo Jumbo, who I followed and watched his videos pretty frequently, had this intro music that he played in front of every single one of his videos, and now every single one of his videos, over 400, have now been claimed, not by the creator that made the song, but by somebody who claims to own, I think it's Warner Chappell. They claim to own the song that was sampled in the song. So you're talking one sentence, one stanza. In the last recording, I talked about how even one sentence of plagiarism is still plagiarism. There is, I think, a difference between directly copying a sentence in writing and sampling music, sampling one stanza, one bar of a song. And the music industry in particular has been obstinately steadfast at claiming that there is no such thing as fair use, and making an artistic recreation of or a transformative work of anything. So they will claim things like that. And I don't think this is a valid claim, frankly. I think the Martin Luther King speech is a great example of something that is copyrighted that should not be copyrighted. But if I were to have a song and it played the I Have a Dream part of that speech, which was a long speech, like, that's a very long speech, and the phrase I have a dream should not in itself be copyrightable. But if I played that audio clip in a song and sampled it, and even if the entire song was just the I have a dream sampled, resampled, run through autotune, played backwards, and mixed up, you've done so much to it at that point, where it becomes a transformative work. Or if you just sample it and don't alter it at all, and it is 10 seconds of a 3-minute audio, a song, that's still not a significant, in my opinion, and I think the copyright law judges are getting to this point too. It's not a significant encroachment on the copyright of the entire sound file of the speech to be considered copyright infringement at all. The copyright is supposed to stop somebody. Is supposed to stop somebody for in the entirety or near entirety republishing a song in this case. Nobody is going to listen to Mumbo Jumbo's intro, which plays for only like 10 seconds at the beginning of their video, his videos, and say, okay, I don't need to buy this song because that song is I've heard enough in the intro and I don't need to buy the whole thing. If you want to listen to that song, you still would have to buy the whole song. And it gets even more ridiculous. Nobody's going to listen to that small few seconds of sampled music inside the 4-second intro music and say that they don't need to buy the original song that was sampled because they've heard that small sample inside that small bit of the song. But this also goes to show how terrible copyright is for YouTube, and I don't have an intro. Part of that is because I don't have somebody who's creative enough to make an intro for me, but also I wouldn't use an intro with any kind of music that's not 100% original. And even if it was 100% original, I've seen too many instances on YouTube where that has gotten claimed too. And I know that music in particular has copyrights on things more than what they really should have. Instead of having a copyright on just exactly that specific audio file, they also have a copyright of the sheet musics, so it can't be printed. They also have a copyright of people not sampling but doing their own performances of that song, which I guess, so you can't do covers of a song either. They've got so many copyrights the music industry does, and it has not helped society as a greater whole at all. It's allowed the worst scum of society to manipulate and rob the actual artist quite often who have created the art, and stop free speech, which at a certain point, copyright is an encroachment on free speech. If you can't even sing a song, have your little child sing happy birthday without people trying to copyright it, which was a real case that was recently lost. It's so ridiculous. The other reason why I don't have an intro is, personally, I just don't think that's what YouTube people want. It's not what I want. I am 100% irritated every time there's an intro in any video. Even if there's a if there's a teaser part of the video and then it goes into an intro and then it goes into the rest of the video, that's annoying. If there's an intro at the beginning each time, that's annoying. Nobody wants that. I've even had this problem that I've gained where I've just lost confidence that the recording software is actually recording. So now when I pre-record things, I often hit the record button multiple times and wait a second, and then there's this awkward silence at the beginning where you're hearing me just hit the keyboard. And I hate that happens, because the software kind of does work with nearly 100% accuracy as long as I hit the right key. And yet I was just shaken, I guess, because I lost one bit of footage 3 months ago because I didn't hit the right key or something went wrong. And ever since then, I've just not been able to mentally just say, it's gonna work, just hit the button, just start talking, which is what I'd want it to do. I want all the videos to start. I do have a small bit of intro. It's inaccurate to say I have nothing. I do say, hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to Hearthstone, or we're back to whatever game I'm playing. That's as much of an intro as I think you need, is just introduce yourself and introduce the game, and then maybe do a bit of a catch-up of what has happened previously so people can get into it. So yeah, I guess episode 5308 of It Sucks to Be a YouTuber is in the effect of what's happening to Mumbo Jumbo, and him having to file basically 400 copyright disputes. They took all the revenue from basically every channel on every episode on this channel, every video on this channel, and and he's manually going in and taking out his intro through the YouTube editor. I don't think that actually works as a strategy, because I think, I mean, you can certainly try that, but that would just be going forward. It really wouldn't work as an excuse to say you never infringed on copyright, because basically what the equivalent of that would be is if I had a video that showed me like kicking a puppy, and then the police filed charges against me for animal cruelty, rightfully so. If I then on YouTube edited out the video so it doesn't show me kicking the puppy anymore, that's really just tampering with the evidence at that point, and YouTube still has the original version anytime you edit it that way. You do a much better job to remove all your videos from YouTube, which Mumbo Jumbo couldn't really do because he has too many, and I'm sure he does not have hard drives upon hard drives of backup. I certainly don't for my over 5,000 videos. But yes, if you remove those videos, you could then at that point edit it out and upload a new video and just republish all your old videos. At a certain point you might want to just make a second channel if you were going to do that, but even that is probably a violation of YouTube's content, and it doesn't really stop the fact that the infringement, if there really actually was infringement, which I don't believe there is in Mumbo Jumbo's case, happened, so you can't retroactively cure the problem. Nightwolf is on the chat. He says, "Hi, what's up? Are you gonna do the adventure?" Question mark. I did chapter 3 yesterday, and I played chapter 2 trying to beat it all yesterday and failed. So there's no intention today to do the adventure unless I simply get all the daily quests done for both my Americas, my European, and my Asian account done, and I have more video game news to talk about. So I might stretch and play a single playthrough of the adventure at the very end of the stream in a couple hours, but I wouldn't even wait around if you want to see that, because that's very, very unlikely to happen. So sorry to disappoint you. Just standard Hearthstone more than likely being played today. Hearthstone and video game news, of which there's not a lot, but we'll cover games that come out on Steam. So, speaking of games that came out on Steam, we have a visual novel here called Reverse Memories. English language is not supported, so immediately it's out of contention. Also, it looks like this is in a windowed version only. The animation for this character looks good, but then so many of these screenshots don't have a character in them, and that typically tells me that this is an indication of a Chinese visual novel. It's $7.99 NC. It is simplified Chinese only. Why Chinese visual novels focus on screens without characters in them is probably a deep and interesting psychological evaluation someone could do, but I assume it comes down to China does not probably have a lot of places that are empty, so they probably value any kind of instance or indication that you could be in a quiet sparsely populated area, because all of China, or most of China, is very densely populated. Whereas Japan is also very densely populated, particularly since the majority of people are in big cities like Tokyo, and Tokyo in particular is very densely populated. But I would say Japanese people are kind of emotionally disconnected from people. They don't share emotions a lot, and so a visual novel for a Japanese audience is trying to capture some camaraderie. I can't say that. It's trying to capture either some romance or friendships that they just do not get in a normal experience in day-to-day life. Everybody is expected in Japan to act proper and not really express their feelings. That's why you see kind of the exact opposite in visual novels, and why there's so many romance visual novels, which is good because there's basically zero romance games in Western games. You might have a first-person shooter where there's a romantic interest or a romantic lead, but it certainly isn't the main focus. Next story we have from TechRaptor. I'll also mention that I tried a new news source called Niche Gamer on Wednesday. Their tweets to well, frankly, their tweet to garbage ratio was not good enough for me to keep them on my news feed on Twitter. They just tweeted too many silly things and too many repeated stories, and they weren't really putting out anything that I wasn't seeing from any of my other news sources, which is a shame. I'm always looking to replace things like GameIndustry.biz is a website I would replace if it weren't for the fact that they often have original news and they're not just mentioning news stories from other people. And same might happen for Gamasutra. I don't think I'd get rid of Gamatsu because they have very unique original stories from Japan, and TechRaptor is doing a pretty decent job, so I don't think I would replace them either. It would be nice if there was just one specifically tailored to me news site, but there isn't, and that would be shoddy secondhand journalism, which is pretty much what I'm doing. If I only followed one source, it would be the equivalent of me only watching Fox News and reporting everything they say is true, or only watching CNN or MSNBC and only reporting what they say is true. Getting back to TechRaptor though, Panic, which was the publishers of Firewatch. Firewatch is a game that was developed by a couple people who were later hired, and I assume still work for Valve. Their game is famous for threatening to DMCA PewDiePie for his coverage of his positive coverage, I believe, of Firewatch, and because PewDiePie said the N-word accidentally mid-game of, like, I think it was Call of Duty or something. So it had nothing to do with their game whatsoever, and so they just kind of stepped in the poop for no reason, and made themselves part of the controversy they had no need to be part of. But that's not the important part. That's just kind of the setup to, with that action and other games claiming and other game developers claiming DMCA or committing some other form of egregious bad behavior. Firewatch is on my blacklist, of which there's maybe about 5 games that I just will not cover, ever. I will never own them, I'll never support them, I'll never give them any coverage other than the coverage I just gave, which was to say that they threatened to make a false DMCA on PewDiePie for a completely invalid reason. They would have been perfectly within their rights to use their free speech to denounce him, to disagree with them, but it is ridiculous to assume that someone who plays your game is associated with you or in any way representing your product, and that gives you a justification to violate copyright law and file false DMCAs. And yeah, that was Campo Santo, I believe was the name of the company, and the couple of people in that company, I think it really was only about 2 people, went to work for Valve, and it seems like at this point they've disappeared into Valve, although I do suspect that they were the people behind Valve's short stint in censoring adult games on Steam, which now seems to be completely abandoned as a concept. For better. But a lot of people are reporting this as though it has anything to do with Campo Santo. It doesn't. It has to do with the publisher, just the people who maybe funded Firewatch, coming out with this black and white hand-cranked video game, and some of the games will actually be controlled by the hand crank. This is a stupid device, just on the face of it. Like, it is dumb. You're going to pay $150 for a black and white screen and a D-pad and 2 buttons and a USB onboard memory and battery built in. They are going to once a month add games to it for the first season, and then if it sells well enough, they might consider putting out some more games. Yeah, not once a month, once a week, over the air. Players are notified that a game is being delivered by a flashing light on the device, so it seems like it might have some kind of cell phone connectivity. They've gotten someone who worked on the Katamari series and Benet Foddy, of Getting Over It with Benet Foddy, working on these small black and white games. But these small black and white games are frankly game jam examples of games. They're things that you could probably crank out in less than a week's worth of working. See, it says it has Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and a USB-C jack and a headphone jack. So it's no cell phone connectivity. It's over the air, as in Wi-Fi updates. And it's supposed to come out sometime in 2020. The thing that I think you would take from this as probably the oddest missing feature is the one reason why you would want a game console like this to work and have a crank would be because it would charge up the device, and I see nothing here that indicates that it would charge up a device. Nothing at all. And I assume this crank flips down for storage into the slot. So yeah, it's just a dumb design in general. You have this edge here that you clearly would have wanted to get rid of. And since there's a screw in these three corners holding the thing together, that tells you that there's a screen cover piece of plastic here you'd have to pull off to take it apart, which means you're probably going to ruin at least the screen's cover and have to maybe if you're really careful with a razor you could pull this off, scratch all the glue off of it, and then get to that screw. Either that or there is no screw behind it, which is kind of what you would assume since they're not hiding the screws at all, is that maybe there's no screw behind that at all. But when you take apart a device like that, I'm sure you're not going to find too much as far as internals to work with. Meanwhile, very soon from now, there is going to be a Game Boy case from RetroFlag that you just put a Raspberry Pi Zero in, or a clone of a Raspberry Pi Zero into it, and it will look like the original Game Boy with a full color screen and have run off of regular AA batteries that you can get in rechargeable form if you want. And it will have not just an A and B button, it'll have a D-pad, an A, B, X, Y button, a left, right, and right bump. It has a much more pleasant looking case and design because it looks like the original Game Boy. And yeah, so that would be a way better device, and I believe the RetroFlag device is gonna sell for like $69, and then you have to spend $5 for a Raspberry Pi Zero to put in it, and then you put in what kind of memory card, which might bump it up to another $30 if you're gonna put a decently sized micro SD card in it. But you're still not getting to the $149 price that the Panic, the Playdate is. Also, for comparison, Walmart has just released a tablet for $69 that is pretty decent price for a low-end tablet, and it's an Android tablet where you can play Android games and you could run emulators on it to play older games, things below the PlayStation 1 pretty much. You probably could get PlayStation 1 games to play, but only some of the Nintendo 64 games would play, and everything earlier than that will probably play fine. So, in comparison, there's just nothing here. You could also buy a TI 83 Plus for $150, and then you would have for your kids a calculator that they can use in high school, that they can program their own basic games into, and have a black and white screen and have a device for more value. And that's an odd comparison because the 83 Plus, as far as a graphing calculator, is a hugely overpriced device, but still something you might end up buying. So I literally, any way I shake it, any way I look at it, this Playdate is a terrible, terrible design. It's worse than even like the Ouya or some of the other failed mobile game consoles by far. Selling yourself with one unique feature, I could certainly see a designer thinking to themselves, yes, we need one unique feature to make our device stand out, but a crank is not going to fix it. And there's no fishing game announced, which would be the one kind of game you would want for that. Meanwhile, in Japan, there are actually at least one, if not two, fishing games for the 3DS that do have cranks on them also, so it's not even unique. But also, it's nice to see some hardware to criticize, because we probably won't see any other pieces of hardware worth mentioning until the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox 2 comes out. But we've got a lot to talk about, so let's move forward.
The battle.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Tornado. This looks like a low-effort infinite runner, but instead of running as a human being or animal, you're running as an actual tornado, which I guess you're flying as a plane, but maybe you're flying away from a tornado or flying towards a tornado. It doesn't seem like it has anything to do with tornadoes except for in specific levels. Seems like it's just asset flips all over the place. The game is free, so the price is right, but even at that, this is just Unity asset store. Let's buy this, let's buy that, let's put it together, let's have a terrible UI menu. So nothing more needs to be evaluated from that.
Converting stored energy. Reporting for duty.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Fortress of Hell, and this is a very metal 80s animation style here. But looking at this, it seems like there's different drawing styles that they don't seem like they're all matching. And then this one is so close to the foreground and so back to the foreground, it makes this character look completely taller, like a giant compared to the other. What this, though, seems to be an actual gameplay is just an RPG Maker game. Yeah, another pathetic, boring RPG Maker game. This arguably would be what you would call a Western style nowadays, although it is very much the same animation style that would have been in the mid 80s, early 90s of anime. The animation styles, particularly of anime, have changed so much. Yeah, the game is discounted to $5.39, and calling yourself Fortress of Hell is probably not edgy enough nowadays to even catch people's attention. I don't think an edgy name alone will do enough to get people's attention. Well, I'm playing cards, and that's what I needed to do. It would have been nice if I had won, but we made it to rank 15. Next game we have on Steam is a bigger game, Total War 3 Kingdoms. So this is a conversion of the Total War Series 2 being around the 3 Kingdoms of China. I saw an article that mentioned now that they've clearly realized that the Total War Series biggest audience is China. This is an example of companies falling into the appeal of China's vast populace and thinking that their vast populace will equal sales. This game is just out, so these sales numbers are way too early to be claiming victory. Yeah, I do need to play more Paladin cards. Just wanted to make sure I hadn't done the daily quest. So this game is rated very positively. That being said, Steam did say they basically welcomed and said they would do nothing for positive review bombs. So now I'm kind of legitimately worried that any and every game might be positively review bombed. Particularly if it's a game talking about ancient histories of any country in a jingoistic, populistic way. That being said, what I can evaluate here is this does look good. This is a game that I would want to play if I wanted to play a Total War game. So it would be unfair of me to not put this on my follow list. So that's exactly what I'll do. It does have Denuvo on it. It's $39.99. Has a third-party end-user license agreement. Supports a lot of languages. Let's see. Interestingly enough, it doesn't support Japanese.
Move quickly.
It supports traditional Chinese and simplified Chinese, but no Japanese. Then that probably makes sense, because I wouldn't be surprised if half of the conflicts of ancient China were against the Japanese. Let's face it, the Japanese were the bad guys for a very long period of their history, but pretty much everybody was at one point or other in their history. If you've been around long enough as a country, you've been the bad guy in some conflict. That's probably also the biggest game coming out today, if I was to guess, and it is frankly the closest thing to a AAA game with mass appeal that will probably come out before the E3 happens. What's also interesting, I would say, worth mentioning, is that Sega is the publisher of... Sega, the Japanese company, is the publisher of Total War 3 Kingdoms. So a Japanese publisher publishing a game not in Japanese language. Moving on, we have a game here called Fantasy Hero Manager. Just by the title alone, I know this game is not going to interest me. But you can also see they've shrunk all the action down to a tiny little view screen and then taken up over half the screen with just UI, equipment, life bar things. This is terrible looking visually, and it's hiding really low quality graphics, I assume, and that's why they did it, because it would make so much more sense to just show this. This is $6.99, but if you're a Fantasy Hero Manager, you may not actually be playing the game at all. You might just be managing the person who's playing the game, which is ridiculous as a concept. So nothing appeals to me on that, so I'm going to move forward. Next, we have what looks like a low-effort mobile port called Tricky Fox. Yeah, platformer. Looks like a simplistic little demo of a game. Not something that I think you could sell as a complete product. It's 59 cents discounted. Yeah, nothing visually appealing on that either. Let's see. If we do this,
access denied.
And didn't do this. That didn't work out as well as I'd like it to. We may have already talked about this before, but TechRaptor has an article. The time-bending visual novel You Know is coming to the West in October of 2019. Do we have a specific time? October 1st. Alright. I could look at the trailer, but I kind of already know what it is. It's a weird time-bending, I think, murder mystery style visual novel. Of which a lot of visual novels come out, and a lot of them are good, but they would only really interest people who are already into playing visual novels, and they have a very hard time interesting anybody outside of that group.
I don't have enough men.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Who Are You, Mr. Cooper? Let's see, what is this? Steampunk, relaxing. Well, all I'm seeing here is a matching game on the trailer. And I'm seeing some dialogue. So this seems like this is mostly just a text adventure with a few graphics. Like, you might classify something like this as a visual novel too, but maybe it doesn't even qualify as a novel. See, it's being tagged as a relaxing adventure. To me, it looks like it has very little gameplay. It seems like the X's and O matching game is all there is. They're asking $3.59 discounted for this. This is the English, Russian, and Ukrainian game, which then makes me a little afraid that it is potentially a Russian troll game, although everything I see here doesn't really imply that it's a troll game. It seems like it's an attempt at something that's attempting to be some quality product, but just failed miserably for a lack of quality gameplay. So, Who Are You, Mr. Cooper, not making it to the fall list? The Steam Summer Sale is coming out, so I say this almost every stream, I need to clean up the fall list, and I guess I will probably do that after I finish the Doom reboot, pre-recording all of those episodes. Or maybe I'll have to reevaluate and see if there's anything more I want to do for Halloween month as far as horror games. I'm not getting through a lot of them, quite frankly, with the reduced amount of videos I'm releasing now. 4 more Paladin cards need to be played. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Happy World. This is a asset flip Roblox looking game where it seems like you're just throwing different colored, basically water balloons at each other.
I will fight with honor.
Nothing here looks particularly interesting. Frankly, if you make anything look like Roblox, including Roblox, you lose my interest immediately. This early access for $4.99. It includes one achievement, which makes it feel like it's an achievement game, and only supports English, which probably doesn't matter. Yeah, so that's not making it to the fall list. Yeah. Frankly, I think the vast majority of people who are playing Roblox are streamers that are trying to get views from playing Roblox, and not people that would really want to play that. Because as I see it, Roblox was immediately replaced with a better quality style game in Fortnite if you're looking for shooting, which is what I think Roblox offers, and its visuals are just clones of Minecraft, and I would just stick with Minecraft if you like the kind of family-friendly, non-violent, mostly non-violent experience that you have with Minecraft. So Roblox to me feels like it is the mushy middle between Minecraft peaceful mode and Fortnite, and seems to really only have its popularity because the YouTube gaming recommendation algorithm is messed up and continuously promoting these things. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Conglomerate 451, which is tagged nudity, so I didn't check that. This looks like a shooter, but there's a lot here. A lot of UI happening, with frankly too much UI. Let's see, it's a grid-based dungeon crawler, first-person RPG with roguelike elements. When you see a description like this, where it's grid-based dungeon crawler, first-person RPG, roguelike elements, you know at that point the game is being written just to get tagged as everything to get people's attention. This is early access. They want $14.39 discounted. Full audio English, it says. I don't trust this game. I don't see anything in this game that makes me want to play it or put it on the follow list. Being a dungeon crawler in particular, like, that means it's more than likely going to be a boring game. Dungeon crawlers, I've yet to see a good dungeon crawler, just full stop. So yeah, that's, they overreached with that description and didn't actually describe what the game was actually about. Just gonna play this. Play that so I can play this on top of it next turn. Next we have a game on Steam called Pathologic 2. I don't really understand why Pathologic 1 is as popular as it is, but it seems like it is some kind of weird, surreal experience that people liked enough to deserve the design of Pathologic 2 to be made and to come out with. It's some kind of psychological horror.
Let me think.
I don't get it, but it's already rated very positively. It's $34.99. There's been the original Pathologic and a remake, I believe, of the original Pathologic. So only one of those versions might be on Steam. This is an English and Russian game. If I did not know the history of this, I would just label a Pathologic 2 as a Russian troll game of some sort. But there's something here. Like, when you see a screen like this, when you see a screen like that, that means there's some kind of gameplay element that was designed. And there's a variety of art assets that all seem to merge kind of nicely with each other. Sorry, taking too long to play the game. So this is a game that will go on my follow list. I don't fully understand it. It is also kind of an example of a game where you almost certainly need to play either the remake or the original version of the game to see if you like it before you even think about playing the sequel. And I think that's mostly true in general, is that if you don't play the original of a game, you probably shouldn't play the sequel to it. There's a few examples where I think you can exclude those. Like, if you wanted to play the newest Halo game and you haven't ever played a Halo game before then, you're still probably in a decent position to to play the newest one.
For justice.
Yeah, I'm sure that they'll recap what happened in all the previous Halo games when the new one comes out. Next, we have a game on Steam called Balance Lot. I assume this is supposed to be pronounced like Ba Lancelot, but I don't know how you would pronounce that, so that sounds like the word balance and the word Lancelot. It doesn't, for what is effectively a platformer with a silliness to it, it doesn't look terrible. It has its own kind of hand-drawn art style. Seems like there will be certain levels. It kind of has that mobile game concept with the levels. It's $5.99 with a 25% off, and English full audio only as the language.
I must move quickly.
I don't know how much of this is just going to be wacky control scheme, because it seems like they're selling it on that. This is a great example of a game that should be on the fall list, because this could easily go a couple different ways. It could be that people hate it because it controls terribly, and then the game is kind of pointless, or people love it because it has really tight controls and there is a way to actually play it and feel like you're having a good experience. Getting Over It with Benet Foddy is a great example of that too. The controls in that are crazy, to say the least, but they are fair because it is doable, but hard. And maybe if I saw a bunch of reviews for Balance a Lot that say it's incredibly hard, I still might not want to put it on the wish list for that reason.
Converting stored energy.
Jeez, I guess the reason there's a whole strategy with this Paladin deck that I'm not catching on to, where I'm supposed to get these galvanizers in my hand while having a bunch of mechs in my hand to reduce their costs to do a major combo mid game or late game. Next, we have a game on Steam here called An Adventurer's Tale. It's from Epic Works, which is not Epic Studio, which is, I believe, Epic that has an Epic store. It would make very little sense that anything from Epic would come out on Steam. And Top Hat Studio is the publisher. I've not heard of either one of these companies, but on the looks of it, this looks like, oh, it's tagged sexual content. I should look over here. Let me just look at the screenshots to make sure it's YouTube friendly. Yeah, it seems like the screenshots are YouTube friendly. Alright. So, seems like it's a dungeon crawler RPG style game. It has a pretty bad interface here, and it seems like maybe you only have 4 attacks, showing that. There's a collection of anime girls that you're going to talk to in the visual novel style and not particularly fight, so maybe you hire them. It seems a little generic, which is a bit of a shame, because this thumbnail in particular does look nicely animated, but that's what tends to happen, is that the thumbnail is the only part of the game that they put any work into.
Reporting for duty.
about to lose over here, but that's fine. It's English in the interface and Adventurer's Tale, and it is a low effort title. It has a free 18+ DLC patch, which seems to be the way they like to go on Steam, and I think that works pretty well. As a free speech advocate, I would say it should be the other way around, but if games came completely uncensored when you first purchased them and then there was a free censorship patch, that would be fine, but going the opposite direction's not terrible. Alright, so in our efforts here to get this get up and ranked, we've made it to rank 15. We're at rank 15. If I don't play any more ranked before the end of the month, which probably is not going to happen, that's a pretty good position to be. Let's just switch over to the European account and see what the daily quests are for that. Yeah, I have to pass on Adventurer's Tale though. Like, there's too many little things that look bad about it. Low effort name, low effort enemy design. Hey, this is now available. Which we have a challenge of friends, so let's immediately see if we can find somebody who's close to being done.
Tonight, a tale of long lost worlds. Just a pinch of liquor.
Let's see, 13 to 17. He is playing the solo mode, so it's unlikely he would want to do a challenge a friend. Let's see what Nightwolf is doing. Nightwolf is just playing against someone, but he's also just started the game, so that would take too long to watch him. Although it would give me an excuse to cover news a little bit faster. Now, I'm not coming in here to do this, I'm just coming in here to purchase
magical beasts
and unlock this.
These prison cells. Such beautiful creatures. We must unleash them.
So yeah, on the European account I haven't succeeded on any of them. On the Asian account I haven't tried on any of them. And I probably won't ever do that. I'm not sure I even got victories on Rastakan's Rumble or Boomsday Project. What I'm expecting will happen is we'll have daily quests, and these daily quests will eventually tell us that we have to defeat a certain number of bosses in the Rise of the Shadow Soul adventure experience, and when those occur I will then play it on the Asian and European accounts, but no reason to spend extra effort to do the Soul Adventure 3 times. And we've still got plenty of gold, so when everything is purchased I think we will probably open up a few packs. So I guess otherwise, as long as we're waiting for people to become free, yeah, we could send this a friendly challenge. See if he wants to take it. But I wouldn't be surprised if he cancels. Alright, we need a Paladin victory, so we'll just play Paladin against him and see if we can get 2 things done. As we're loading, we have a game on Steam here called Downtown Drift. And these screenshots are dark screenshot syndrome, very, very dark, as I call it, from inside the car. And the only bright picture I hear is a light being shined in your face and saying being busted. So it seems like this is a $3.99 game with 4 achievements that is really just kind of an infinite runner, in the sense of you're in a car trying to run from the police in a terrible simulation. So visually that doesn't catch my attention. Gameplay wise that doesn't catch my attention. Let's see. I play this, this, and this, and then return. Next we have a game on Steam called Abstract, which seems to be, it's an Unreal game because they had the Unreal logo. Seems to be a Fortnite clone. It doesn't inherently negate that this game might be fun or good. The problem though is it would be a battle royale style game, player versus player, multiplayer of some sort style game. It's from an unknown studio, but I guess Bluehole, the developers of PUBG, are also a unknown studio, so that's not an argument that I think is 100% valid. Abstract is not discounted. It's $18.99 and supports full audio in English. So it says as a single player, but this clearly is a multiplayer focused game. Let's look at the developer and see if they've got anything else on Steam. No, they don't. Alright. Well, for me, Abstract is a no-go because it's so multiplayer centric, and I just don't play multiplayer centric games. Criticizing or reviewing a multiplayer game is near impossible because it will be the experience you have, which will be very different from the experience anyone else has. You might run into a bunch of trolls, or you might have some great friends playing with you online. But I would also say this is a unheard of company trying to make this, so I doubt that this would get popular in the first place. So Abstract is on Steam if it interests you, but yeah, I don't know how you would consider that a potential keeper compared to Fortnite, which will almost certainly be a big deal, and PUBG will still be a big deal, and several other games will come out. In comparison, Anthem, Anthem was supposed to be a game like that, and it's failing miserably. Several big AAA developers who had a lot better chance of stealing some of the thunder of Fortnite and PUBG have failed. I really think it just kind of boils down to a realization that the first and second games to the market in the form of PUBG and Fortnite are the only games that are going to actually succeed in that market for a very long time, until somebody does something amazingly new and interesting with it. Moving on, we have an article from TechRaptor, the Figment review, Fear Itself. Let's skip down and get the general review. They gave it a 9.0 amazing, which is good because it was a game I was certainly thinking about wishlisting and playing. The summary is boasting a surprising depth and engaging world. Figment is proof that there's something that looks geared to your younger audience can be enjoyed by everyone. Pros are gorgeous world, stellar use of music and writing, strong cast and characters. Cons are mindless, imprecise combat, and easy puzzles. Let's see.
Put this apple on your head.
Follow the rules.
I guess I can't do anything. For reference, here's a screenshot from Figment, just in case you don't know what it looks like. It's a adventure game where you walk around in a surreal world. So it is kind of creepy, kind of kid friendly. Moving on.
The light protects me.
Reporting for duty. Job done.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Dumb Little Creatures, which seems like a Lemmings game that's running at an incredibly low frame rate. And because they made this Lemmings clone in 3D, they painted themselves into a corner that they really didn't need to do. Lemmings really only makes sense as a flat 2D, 2.5D game, and it barely makes sense as a game anyways. That's why you don't see new Lemmings games come out on an annual basis, as it was a puzzle game from a long time ago and nobody's done anything lately with it. They want $14.99 for this game, claim to support quite a few languages in full audio, which probably means there is no actual voice acting, it's just sound effects of gibberish speak. Yeah, there's nothing here that makes me think that this is worth $14.99, particularly looking at the trailer and seeing the game stutter like it does. I think there's a decent excuse for historic relevancy to play the original Lemmings games, Lemmings 1, Lemmings 2. But after that, I don't think there would be a good reason why you would ever want to play a new Lemmings game, unless they're doing something very, very different with it, and then it really wouldn't be a Lemmings game. And yeah, there's a lot of games from decades previous that made sense in the old days and don't make any sense now. Nobody would make a arcade style Pac-Man or Centipede game, where Pac-Man and Centipede are classics for a reason. Moving on, we have a hidden object game, House of a Thousand Doors, Serpent Flames. And don't get tricked by the trailer. This is half adventure, half hidden object game, like so many hidden object games are. And this is a developer who really has only put one screenshot actually showing the hidden object section, which is here. And then the rest of them is showing sections of the game that you won't. Oh, there's another screenshot. It's $5.59 discounted though. So, and there's a whole bundle here you can get for 4 for slightly below $20. That's sad to say a pretty good deal, because the hidden object games are so overpriced on Steam, and there's so many of them too. So 37 mini games, 15 hidden object games. I wonder if the 15 hidden object games are included as mini games. 20 animated story scenes. It's these hidden object games, which are best still described that way, really do go a full gambit in the sense of how much cut and paste content is added together. But they're not bad. They're just usually way too expensive. And I've, at this point, covered enough hidden object games for one lifetime, so I don't see a reason to friend this. The person typed in good game, GG, and then TY as in thank you. So, where are we now? We need 2 more Paladin or Warrior victories, which gives me excuse to play Paladin on ranked and try to get up in rank on the European account, which I haven't been paying anywhere as much attention as the main account. We've got a lot of news, a lot of games to talk about.
You asked for
So
it.
I will fight.
we could
with honor.
certainly go rather long today, or maybe I could figure out a way to speed this up if I put some more oomph in it. Tech Raptor has an article here. Telltale Games are being delisted from Good Old Games on May 27th. Tales from the Borderlands is not available on Steam.
Job's done.
A Good Old Games employee has notified users that the storefront informed that all remaining Telltale games will be delisted from Good Old Games catalog on May 27th, 10 a.m. UTC, which all users who purchased any of the titles prior to delisting will be able to keep the game in their libraries, so I assume that means you can still download it. That's usually how this works.
Job's done.
But particularly on Good Old Games, you might want to keep a backup just in case. With Telltale going out of business, there definitely seems to be a lack of effective. I don't even know how to describe it other than effective management and publication of the games. This is probably because whoever through the bankruptcy, which may still be going on, gets the rights to the Telltale games may have to just renegotiate it. Let's see. Tales from the Borderlands in particular is a slightly different question than some of the other Telltale games, though, because this is like a renegotiation on licensed products.
Got
So
something to hide?
2K owns the Borderlands things. People may think that Gearbox would own the license or the IP for Borderlands, but no, 2K does. So that might explain why only Tales from the Borderlands right now has been delisted from Steam, whereas every other Telltale game is licensed from somebody different. Wolf Among Us would be a license of a comic book, Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy a license from Disney at this point, Batman, the 2 Batman games would be a license from Warner Brothers and maybe DC Comics, but I think DC Comics might be a subsidiary of Warner Brothers at this point. Sam & Max, a license from Sam & Max, and that goes for basically every game that they made except for Telltale Poker, but even in Telltale Poker they have licensed characters, which this inherently just goes to show how dumb the business model for Telltale was. It was successful, sure, for The Wolf Among Us and the Walking Dead games, but the fact that they at no point were trying to make their own self-owned IP put them in this position where they could not make a game without paying a major license fee to somebody, and the games they were making were very much the same thing over and over again. This is oddly pretty much the exact same case for Gearbox. While Gearbox did buy Duke Nukem, I don't think they could save their company if it needed saving by making a new Duke Nukem game. And while they do have their publishing company, which seems to be what a lot of small and medium-sized game developers have started doing, is just having their own publishing divisions, that's not really going to save the business either.
For justice.
If they need a miracle. So yeah,
Job's done.
wouldn't be surprised if Gearbox was the next company to go out of business, and we will have some more Gearbox talk later today, so we'll have to reset the days since we last talked about Randy Pitchford counter. I really should make an animation about that for as often as it's becoming a case. But moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Clam Man, which looks like a comedy point-and-click adventure. I don't really like this animation style, frankly, but since it's going for a silly appearance in the first place, I think this kind of falls into it. So you kind of have to get on board with the idea of a lot of fish and aquatic looking characters to play what is probably a pretty simplistic point and click. So despite my reservations, I'll put this on the follow list and we'll see if people like it and review it positively. It's $8.99 discounted, which is not really out of the normal for a point and click adventure. Let's see.
Follow the rules.
For justice.
Amazing. The light protects
The
me.
battle. Reporting
Show
for
me.
duty. Job's done.
I must move quickly.
Let's see. Alright, well, this next game is tagged nudity and sexual content. We talked about this game when it was announced. Punchline, based on an anime where you're a ghost who is creeping around an area looking at the panties of the anime girls in this like hotel or apartment complex or such. That seems to be exactly what this game is about and exactly what the game is. It's $49.99, and I guess I can put it on the follow list, but it's certainly not a game that would be YouTube friendly enough. Here is the ghost character, and yeah, it just wouldn't be YouTube family friendly enough, being rated M for mature, compared to say a Neptunia game which is rated T+ for teens,
For justice.
where you may see a panty shot here and there, but that is not the 100% focus of it. As for
I must move quickly.
whether there's any actual nudity, according to the ESRB rating, the answer is no. The description on Steam says mild nudity and sexual content, which probably means that you might see some boobs, but nothing hardcore. I always feel like I need to explain the difference between hardcore and softcore. Hardcore is when you see the lower genitalia of a person. Softcore is where you may see an entire sex scene, but they are actively
What to do?
not filming it in a way that you can see anything as far as lower genitalia. Let's see. Moving on to the next game we have is called Long Z Night, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter zombie game.
Time runs out on me.
It's a hard sell, certainly. It is quite a hard sell to want to play a zombie shooter like this. It's $9.99, English only as language. Really trying here to find a reason why I'd want to put this on the wish list. And I think I'll just be generous and do it. But yeah, a top-down twin-stick shooter where you're shooting zombies are such a dime a dozen that you know, even if this was good, I'd have to be told it was good by a video game reviewer before I'd actually trust that it was good. So that being said, I can't put that on the follow list. It's just so generic. Gamatsu had to update one of their stories. They said that the romance visual novel Enunatsu line was coming to the PS4 and Vita. Apparently it's just under consideration still. So, let's see. They're being considered for release and have not been fully announced, which is Japanese for saying yes, of course it's happening, but you didn't wait until our announcement date, so we're gonna just say it's being considered.
Reporting for duty, for justice.
And that's not a uniquely Japanese thing either. That's pretty much how all game publishers try to do things, is that they don't want you to know that a game is in development until they are ready to announce that the game is in development, so that they can advertise it better or control the advertising on it. Next we have a game on Steam called Fox and Bunny. This looks like a poorly animated platformer. There's just a bad palette color here. Very solid colored dirt where you could better texture it. Pretty generic background. The camera is zoomed out way far for no good reason. Yeah, they want $2.54 discounted, which tells me it's not a high quality game anyways. Yep. So it's English, Chinese, Russian, and German, which is an odd combination of languages. And over here they decided to play all their cards and then concede because they knew they were going to lose. But they were showing off their strategy. I wasn't really paying attention though, so I didn't see it either. Trying to get through all the news instead of wasting time focusing on Hearthstone. Particularly since I spent most of yesterday wasting time playing Hearthstone. Next game we have on Steam is Plague of Days, which looks a lot like that survival game. What is the name of that? That's very popular, or was very popular. Don't Starve. It looks a lot like Don't Starve. This does. 99 cents though tells me it probably has nowhere the level of polish that Don't Starve has. English full audio, it claims. At this price and at what's being shown, I can't put this on the follow list. Like, this might be a great hour-long game, but it still probably wouldn't be worth $1. So, yeah. It's also on itch.io, which makes me wonder if it's free on itch.io. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a large percentage of games that are simply for free on other sites, but cost 99 cents to be on Steam because they paid to have them on Steam via Steam Direct. Like, if you only really have to pay $100 to list your game on Steam, as it is on Steam Direct, then selling something for $1 and hoping you get 100 sales pays that back.
Got something to hide?
Or somewhat like that. The calculation is probably a little bit different. Next we have a game on Steam here called Continuum, which seems to be just a bunch of 3D assets of 3D polygons flying in space, and you're in a infinite runner effectively, just even though you're flying as a cube. This is certainly a plausible attempt to hide the fact that you made a low effort 3D runner, but certainly not a game you want to play. It's discounted to 59 cents English in the interface, 24 achievements, so it's an achievement game almost certainly. Let's see.
Show me!
Next we have another Asian game called Embrace of the Three Kingdoms OL, and yes, of course you'll see a lot of games with 3 kingdoms in the name. 3 kingdoms or 12 kingdoms, or some other number of kingdoms. There were several eras, as I understand it, which I really don't. There were several times in Chinese history that there were several kingdoms fighting for control of all of what China would be. English was not supported in this game, free to play. It's rated mostly positive. Supports Korean in full audio, so technically I wouldn't be surprised if this is a Korean first and Chinese second game. As for what the game is, it says it's an RPG, but I guess it'd probably be closer to be called like a MMO, like yeah, it's tagged MMO within app purchases. There we go. We're on a win streak. Let's not stop the win streak. Let's keep playing until we lose. Gamasutra has an article here. GitHub launches a Patreon-like crowdfunding program called GitHub Sponsors. That way, developers using its platform could get financial support to one another via recurring monthly sponsorship payments. Which this was kind of happening via Patreon, and it seems like a lot of people want to get away from Patreon for one reason or another. Some of which I think are very good reasons. So it's not unheard of for the Ubuntu organization to donate to the Debian Linux program, because at the end of the day, Ubuntu is built on Debian Linux. And Debian Linux might be giving something to the Linux kernel program itself. So it's helpful often to donate to projects that your project is based off of. It's nice, and it's not a terribly unfriendly group of people when you get into GitHub projects and Linux projects in general. Let's not confuse the two, though. There's a lot of things on GitHub that aren't based on Linux at all. But GitHub is mostly open source, and open source people tend to be a little bit friendlier and nicer. Of course, then there is the danger of Microsoft or Red Hat getting involved by financing your project and then infiltrating and destroying that project from the inside out, which is what Microsoft particularly has been accused of doing when it joined, I believe it was the Linux Implementers Forum group. So having GitHub projects support each other in a Patreon-like way is great. As an end user, as a gamer, you probably wouldn't be recommended to involve yourself in any of that, unless you're a programmer too and you use GitHub. Supporting a project that's early in development like this doesn't make a lot of sense for an end user, unless you just are very charitable and rolling in cash. The thing that I think is pretty obvious to say is, if somebody was making a product on GitHub and developing it, and they were anywhere close to releasing that product, say a year or two away from it coming out, if they needed money, if they wanted to raise money, would at that time just make a Kickstarter or a Patreon or something along that lines. There's very little reason to not try to crowdfund via a larger crowd than GitHub if your project needs that kind of funding. These GitHub Patreon sponsorships are probably, for most people, going to be like, even for the biggest projects, they'll probably have only 100 or so sponsors. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't get into big numbers. Next, we have a game on Steam that I believe is a Chinese game, and it seems to be kind of a troll experience of being on a train in either China or New York. I assume this might be like, oh, this is what it's like on the train in China. It's not really crowded enough to be a Japanese train. Here you can see people are hanging off the bars, and I don't know if maybe there's how the gameplay in this is supposed to work, but it doesn't look like much of a game in the first place. It's $1.99, and yeah, it's simplified Chinese. There's banana peels on the floor. Yeah, so I think it pretty obviously is a parody of a bad experience of being on a subway train type
for justice
type vehicle in China. Whereas if it was a Japanese train, you would also probably have a bad experience, but that would just be because you're crammed in with a lot of other people. And I think that's pretty universal, I guess. There really isn't a good point anywhere in the world that you want to be on a subway or a public transit in a large area of people. Lemon Lover came on the chat to say good evening and then put a lemon emoji. Good evening, Lemon Lover. Trying to get a win streak going here, so if I lose here, then I guess I'm done for, and I should just move over to the Asian account. At this next game we have on Steam is Tag Me, so let me double check the screenshots. We're almost to the point where I think they've fixed it, where there are no longer inappropriate screenshots on Steam. I think that Steam decided it's fine to have adult games, but the screenshot should be family friendly, which is what I think too. I think the storefront itself should be family friendly. So we have a game here that says called Alternate Dimension Diary, which is a walking around game tagged with nudity. It's not a RPG Maker game, although it looks like one, so it might be something that I've just never seen people do. And you're playing as this girl in her PE clothes, walking around, and it's supposed to be, I think, a horror story. It's $7.49, and for what's being shown, it's unimpressive. It's English and Chinese.
Let me think.
Thanks.
And I don't particularly like the art style on it, so it'll be a pass for me. Right now, what is this person chatting to me? Let's see. After you finish your battle, you want a challenge. We'll go. Alright, so he has a challenger friend. Sure. I'll type back to that.
I must move quickly.
Reporting for duty.
Show me.
Let's hit this guy.
For
And then hit
justice.
this guy. Let's see what that does. So, Gamatsu has an article. A Ni no Kuni anime movie launches August 23rd in Japan. Now, this will be interesting because if this anime movie does not come out to the West, then you will once again be in a weird position as far as following and knowing the story of Ni no Kuni. Although the movie may just be a complete and total recap of we've got the fuzzy graphics again. It may just be a recap of what happened to Ni no Kuni 1 or Ni no Kuni 2. So you may not need to actually see the movie. That being said, you still are kind of in a weird position if you want to play Ni no Kuni on PC, because it's just not. The first game is a PS4 PlayStation exclusive.
I will fight with honor.
Alright, so we're just trying to play Paladin cards again. We got another daily quest. It unlocked it. I guess it's good that I unlocked that, because otherwise I would have ended today's stream and had a daily quest that would have been off. And I may have done that several times before, where there was a daily quest I missed on the European account in particular.
The light protects me.
Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article here. ZeniMax has settled the Redfall trademark dispute with the book publisher. ZeniMax and the book publisher Bookbreeze have resolved their legal dispute over Redfall trademarks. The two companies came to loggerheads, that's a big word, in February after ZeniMax attempted to trademark the word Redfall, which is also the name of the Bookbreeze published sci-fi novel series from the author Jay Falconer. So I assume here that Redfall is the sci-fi game that they are developing.
Got something to hide.
It is the sci-fi game that they are developing to be the third in their linchpin of games, where Fallout 4 is a the Fallout series is a sci-fi series, but it's a sci-fi series set in a post-apocalyptic world that is stuck for the most part on the ground. Redfall was going to be more of a Mass Effect in space style sci-fi games, and then of course their most known Elder Scrolls title. Or Redfall is going to be used in Elder Scrolls, is what this article says. But I don't know why you would hold on to the trademark Redfall in particular. it seems like you could easily try to trademark something else, or change the name, change it to Bloodfall,
Show me.
Blood Moon, or just use the phrase Redfall without, or Blood Moon or Bloodfall without trying to trademark it. Seems like ZeniMax is so focused on suing people for copyright and trademarks and doing so many legal actions that they waste their time and their money being litigious on things that they could have just ignored. Particularly when you compare that to, say, the creators of Rogue Legacy, just telling me they're going to basically ignore a company putting a game that straight up is using their visual assets on Steam. So, just making a complete Rogue Legacy clone.
I'll never tell.
Follow the rules.
Show me.
So, yeah, it seems like smaller companies in particular, and this might be a great argument for the death of all big business, is that if we just limited the size of companies, they would not have the resources, time,
Arena's full.
budget, or care to sue other companies out of business, and instead would just focus on making good products. Because it is kind of universal that after a certain level of success, companies start spending more effort and more money stopping other companies from succeeding than they do creating more products that would help society in any way. Look at Coca-Cola. When's the last time Coca-Cola really tried to make a new flavored drink? It's been a pretty long time. Instead, they just sell Coca-Cola and sue people that try to use their logo or try to use anything that looks like their logo, or make anything that tastes anything like their drink. And I guess Coca-Cola is probably a pretty bad example, since store brand Cokes do try to pretty much emulate them, and they don't seem to really get sued that much. Next we have a game on Steam called Adago, which looks like it's a walking simulator in VR, suffering from dark screenshot syndrome. I don't see even a video here to see what it is. This is a video, okay, at the end. And it's just nothing. There's nothing being shown here. It's free, so I guess the price is right, particularly for VR. But yeah, does not look like anything of interest.
Reporting for duty. The battle. Last one. The battle.
There we go. Next we have a game on Steam. The only part in English is VR. It has a anime character who's pretty well beloved and known. I don't know if her name is Rim or Ray from ReZero. So this might be an officially licensed product, or this might be something where you're just they're stealing art assets completely. It looks like it's your standard VR game where you're mostly just going to be looking at her as a maid, wandering around, interacting with her on a very small amount, and just kind of looking at her, and that's kind of it. It's not even tagged as anything like as far as nudity or sexual content, so you're not getting a lot out of it. You're just living this fantasy simulation.
Must move quickly.
And in all honesty, there is a danger of there being some pretty crazy people playing something like that and falling deep into delusion. For the price of this VR game, it's $19.99. You probably are not getting a lot. It supports full audio in Japanese, and interface is in Chinese and English. I don't know how the person said thank you, and I won't bother to respond to that. I don't know, frankly, if it's worth it. It's definitely not worth it to buy a VR game like this. But if, as a YouTuber, if I thought it would get me some views, I don't even know what I would do there to make even an hour's worth of content. Time to jump over to the Asian account. And I'm not that big of a sucker as for everything anime that I would just buy a game because it has anime in it. In fact, in all honesty, the vast majority of anime games that are licensed products are bad. In the same way that any kind of licensed products normally are pretty bad. 6 secrets, 6 elementals. Let's get rid of secret elementals. 6 secrets and 20 cards. That's going to be an easy daily quest to get done. And we have so much news. Let's come in here and buy week 3 on this. The price goes down, by the way. They wanted $20 to unlock the whole adventure originally. Now they want $15 because I bought one chapter with gold. So the most expensive way to buy it would be to buy each week individually with real world money, because that's $7 each, and 7 times 4 is, well, $28. So you're paying quite a lot more. Right. I guess I play Hunter and I play Ranked for secrets. Gamatsu has an article here. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled Adventure Mode gameplay is out. So Crash Team Racing seems to be like it is more of a possible good game, whereas I would have mostly brushed it off as not going to be anything of quality, or possibly at best a second tier Mario Kart clone. But maybe they've got something here, particularly if this comes out to PC, which it's not. It's coming out to the PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. So if you own a Switch, I'd still say play Mario Kart. You'll have more people playing on the multiplayer by far. But if you are on PlayStation 4 or Xbox One, Crash Team Racing is probably the closest thing to a Mario Kart style game you would have as an option. Gamatsu has an article here. Slay the Spire for Switch launches June 6th. So, Slay the Spire was a game that was in early access for a long time, and I guess it officially came out of early access, but really didn't add a lot more content. So, it's kind of a your mileage may vary experience as to whether you think it's worth it or not. And I would also probably point out that I think the price went up when it came out of early access for Slay the Spire. People, well, video game journalists liked Slay the Spire, but then so often they say they like a game and then they never mention it again, or they like it for the one or 2 days they play it, and then that they move on to the next thing. I could certainly see playing Slay the Spire on the Switch portably makes it a lot more useful as a game, since it is a rogue-like style game where different runs will affect your gameplay differently.
Job's done.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Outlanders, which looks like a racing game, F-Zero style racing, although it kind of looks like the pod racing games from Star Wars Episode 1, if they were done better. Yep, there's nothing terrible about this, so it deserves a follow at least. It's $19.99 discounted right now. I don't think I've heard of this developer or publisher. Is it single player? Somewhat. I will have to come back when I check on this. If it gets positive reviews, I'll have to come back and make sure it has some kind of single player experience. Otherwise, I wouldn't want to play it if it didn't. But for now, it deserves a follow. Next, we have a game on Steam called Wave Circles, which is just Beat Saber all over again. Like, just Beat Saber clones are becoming very prevalent now. Early access requires VR, and it's priced at $9.99, which is a little cheap for a VR game. There's no reason to put this on the follow list, though. If I'm going to play any Beat Saber game, it would be Beat Saber. And I don't know particularly how I would be able to do that without getting content ID'd and copyright claimed like crazy on YouTube. Game Sutra has an article here. Dead Cells has surpassed 2 million copies sold, which is a good number, certainly. So typically I would say the way I'm trying to lock down this information, it feels like if you sell over 300,000 and you're a small independent game, which is where I would put Dead Cells at, I would say it is a small independent game, then yeah, 2 million is far surpassing the 300,000 mark. It had only sold 1 million reportedly in March, so it's gotten quite a lot of extra sales. And Dead Cells is set to launch on iOS this summer and Android further down the line, which I don't know if you really would want to play Dead Cells on a cell phone, but it's an option. Just gonna keep on playing cards. Here's an interesting quote, and I think it points to my tinfoil hat theory that the CEO of Sony in general, not the person in charge of Sony Interactive Entertainment, or Entertainment Interactive, I get up backwards all the time. I think the Japanese CEO of Sony does not care about Sony PlayStation anymore. I don't know if this is because some kind of internal fighting happened. Maybe Sony's CEO is new and he never cared about it. This certainly could have been a case. A similar thing happened at Microsoft, certainly in the opposite direction, where the Xbox division was not a main focus, and then one of the people from the Xbox division got on the board, and then all of a sudden it was a bigger, more important thing to them. But in my mind, certainly lines up with the story that Sony agreed to work, Sony's CEO, this same guy I'm pretty sure, agreed to work with Microsoft in their with their streaming backend, Microsoft Azure services is what it's called. The rumor is that they actually were in negotiation with Amazon for the AWS Amazon Warehouse services to do the backend and support the PlayStation streaming games and services like that, and that Amazon may have been at fault in the fact that they just were not able to negotiate in a pleasant enough manner that Sony wanted to do business with them, so they were not able to come to terms, is what the rumor is. And because Sony could not come to terms with Amazon, they went to their biggest direct competitor, Microsoft, in the back-end server services, and agreed on a deal there. And that agreement was done without informing anybody who worked at PlayStation. Again, at the Sony Interactive Entertainment. So this further comes down the line of a string of stories in which we have this Gamma Sutra story where the Sony CEO says consoles are, I guess it's supposed to be, are a quote niche market within the game industry. Sony chief executive Jim Ryan has suggested consoles now exist in a niche market within the wider game industry. This was done via Q&A via Reset Era, using Reset Era as a source for information. I guess in this case it is the first party source though, so you can't really get around it. So it's odd that you would say it's a niche market, consoles are a niche market, when you're in the process of developing a PlayStation 5. So we are certainly in the middle of what is almost guaranteed to be a historical change in direction for Sony as far as the PlayStation. But we're just so close to it right now, we can't see the bigger picture, or we haven't seen the final chapters of the story. But I suspect the final chapters of the story are going to be something along the lines of either PlayStation breaks away completely from Sony and becomes its own company, which probably wouldn't be financially viable for Sony, so it would make more sense that Sony sold PlayStation completely to another company and made some money, quick cash that way. Or there's going to be some major changes in leadership, either at the top of Sony, which is less likely, or at the Sony Interactive Entertainment PlayStation division. I can't even play this without giving it something an upgrade. I guess it doesn't matter though.
My power over you grows stronger yet.
So yeah, a lot of weirdness coming out of Sony. Of course, that might have just been a slight misstatement or joke or a misquote. It also might be them just hedging their bets and saying that we don't think the PlayStation 5 will sell that well, which I wouldn't be surprised if that is their fears, since Sony's PlayStation's offices are now in California, and they are doing a pretty good job at alienating all the Japanese developers who made PlayStation exclusives. I wouldn't be surprised if there's very few games that are PlayStation exclusives, and thus the PS5 doesn't sell well in Japan. And thus they doesn't sell well anywhere. It was very weird. I heard someone talking about the PlayStation 4 and saying so certainly and so single-handedly that the PlayStation 4 had won this generation of console wars, as it were. And I'm thinking to myself, I never really would have thought that. And I'm not going to say I'm sure it's actually the Xbox One that won, although I will say that had the Xbox One not pivoted, they certainly would have lost if it was the always online digital DRM, which is what they were trying to do. But the level of certainty there seems just odd. Come on, hit this guy. I guess it kind of doesn't matter, but if anything, I would say PC won this generation. PC gaming is better than ever, and that's been my experience. As somebody who was playing on the Xbox 360, I had a whole time before I was even a YouTube streamer where I was not willing to buy an Xbox One, and I was just playing on PC, or not playing games at all, which is also kind of what I was doing somewhat. So yeah, I'd say PC won. If a console, if that's not allowed, then I would say the Switch won, because surely the Nintendo Switch has the best exclusive games by far, and the Nintendo Switch has the portability that none of the other consoles have, and it's a pretty good system. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Remap, which is a top-down twin-stick shooter where you're playing as tanks that are neon, and I'm not a fan of the neon art style in general. But yeah, this looks terrible. Low effort game. It's free. English is its only language. See, I can see the end of the tunnel, but we definitely also only have a little bit left to do as far as daily quests, and I could have broken up this recording into 2 recordings, and I didn't. It's too late now, so I'll just keep on playing. So Borderlands 3 has some tweets out that I think are worth mentioning. Borderlands at Borderlands, which has been named Borderlands 3. It was the original Borderlands Twitter feed. They put out this not shift code. They put out a shift code though, so to be fair, they have been doing this. But then they introduced this new system of VIP. And so if you're a VIP, which to be a VIP you have to pre-order the game as far as I understand. You can redeem the code in the face for 200 points. Which these 200 points are then applicable to, I think, skins or more loot. It seems like it's just more loot. Doesn't seem like there's any kind of exclusive for pre-ordering because of that. So the VIP program was a disappointment because you basically had to pre-order, which means you basically had to pre-order it on the Epic Store, which also means you couldn't have pre-ordered it during the Epic Mega Sale, but let's put that to the side for a second. The problem that is now now they're giving out 2 codes, and they have to go note VIP codes are not shift codes for kind of no reason. Although I would say the VIP codes are easier to read than a shift code, which is basically a hash of codes. But the bigger problem is 3 hours ago they go, we are aware of issues affecting the VIP website. Thank you for your patience. We're investigating 2 hours later, 2 hours ago, those affected by the VIP login issues. Please refresh and try again. We've just deployed a minor patch update. So in the middle of their promotion, their website it didn't work, which inherently does not look professional. I mean, you can't really say anything besides that. It just does not look professional to have your promotion cut off at the pass because your website is running poorly or poorly programmed. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article, Get a Job, Square Enix, Volition, and more are hiring. So if you want to be a level/encounter designer for Cold War game studios and work remotely, that job is available. If you want to be a senior cloud software engineer for Backflip Studios in Boulder, Colorado, that job's available. If you want to be a system designer for player progression at Deep Silver Volition in Champaign, Illinois, that job is available. If you want to be an experienced game designer at Square Enix in Tokyo, Japan, a game's available. Although I would suggest thinking very carefully for working for Square Enix, as it seems Square Enix is losing talent left and right.
I fight.
If you want to be a technical game designer for Dream Harvest in Brighton, England, that job is also available. This is the first time we've covered video game jobs in probably a couple of weeks. I assume the reason for that is still E3. It is also that we are probably into the second quarter and the second fiscal year quarter of a company, or the second annual year quarter of a company probably doesn't do a lot of hiring. But yeah, I could see also at E3 everybody being so focused on doing their E3 presentations that they wouldn't really want to be hiring people. Although it would be a logical and helpful thing to do to say, since E3 is already happening, since we're promoting our new games and players are coming here, why not have a employment row at E3 where you could have recruiters line up in one row in a different section that's quieter and away from all the noise, in a different building probably, and you can just hand your resume to people and you can talk to the recruiters, and they can talk to you about what kind of education and employment level they're looking for. It probably would 99.9% of the time be just the recruiters talking to little kids and kids in high school who want to be programmers. But if you're going to take most of your office to Vegas anyways, why not take your HR, your hiring department there too? That would justify the trip, I think, somewhat well. And there really isn't a good point at any other convention or presentation where you could like solicit employees anyways, and that mostly that probably boils down to that there are far more people that want to work in the game industry than there are actual jobs. But The closest thing would be if you went to GDC, you could work with game developers and talk and you know, rub elbows with people that work in the industry, but even then that's not really designed as an employment event. And I'm sure even now and for years at E3, big top tier employees get together and have private meetings in hotel rooms with other companies to interview for other jobs all the time. But that's by appointment only, and only for the top tier big names, not for people trying to break into the industry. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article, Mutant Year Zero Seed of Evil DLC has been delayed to July 30th, and so has the Switch edition. Which is kind of weird because I didn't know that Mutant Year Zero was even out yet. PC version of the game is already available for pre-order on Steam. So if I click the Steam link, yeah, this, you can pre-order this, but the main game came out December 4th. Wow, it came out and then was immediately forgotten. And I think the reason why was because this game looked so interesting in this trailer and then turned into an XCOM game instead of being a first-person shooter, which is the way the trailer kind of depicted it. And there is some weirdness when your main characters are a humanoid duck and pig, and I think the even human-looking one is actually a snake. I'll have to go back and see if this is on my fall list, if I really want to play it. There might be an argument to play Mutant Year Zero instead of, say, XCOM, but then there's less relevancy to play Mutant Year Zero instead of XCOM.
Job's done.
So it would be kind of a hard justification, and the delay on the DLC doesn't really help anything. Alright, here's a bad game called Martians vs. Robots. Looks like a Plants vs. Zombies game. Let's try to go through these pretty quickly. 59 cents discounted to English. Yeah, looks like Plants vs. Zombies clone. We'll not say anything more about it. GameIndustry.biz has an article, putting PlayStation on the silver screen. Is basically talking about how Detective Pikachu may have convinced Sony to go through their new movie ventures, although probably it was already in the works. And quite frankly, yeah, here's a quote, Detective Pikachu's commercial success opens a lot of doors for other creators and other IPs. I don't see a lot of PlayStation exclusives being turned into movies that weren't already in development for being turned into other movies. If anything, you could argue that this is an admittance of failure to license these games to actual movie development companies, and so Sony is having to do it themselves instead, because Uncharted has been in development as a movie for a long time. There's been several Tomb Raider games that have been made into movies, and a lot of other games have been licensed to be made in movies, but they're just sitting on the shelves. And well, not sitting on the shelves as if the movie has been made. They're just they've been optioned, and that's all that they're ever going to be, is just somebody bought the option to turn it into a movie, and that's it. Meanwhile, the movie industry is having a harder and harder time actually making a profit unless they're making a AAA big blockbuster Marvel movie. So anything less than that as far as action and sci-fi is got very tough competition. And yeah, movie firms in general are just always losing money. So I wouldn't be surprised if 4 years from now there's still not a single movie from this PlayStation division out to see, or that's been made.
Incoming.
Moving on, we have a story here from Gamasutra. 13 data centers in key game dev areas now support xCloud, and testing is open for some devs. xCloud is not Microsoft Azure, which is just a server-side service that is for anybody. I believe grocery stores use Azure, and just lots of people use Azure. xCloud is more of a API plugin service that lets you put Microsoft Xbox Live elements into your game. So you play a game on your phone, you log into your Xbox Live account, you see to your friends, you might be able to chat with your friends, you might get your avatar, you might get achievements on playing on a game on your phone, or possibly even playing a game on the Switch and having some of the Xbox Live services. This is something Microsoft announced, and it was a pretty smart move. Now, I would say they've got their information wrong, or I've got my information wrong, because they're mentioning Azure-driven projects. So unless xCloud is built on top of Azure, they might have the two confused, because they are two very different things. Unless I'm confused, yeah. Like, there's this podcast called Windows Weekly that is two people that do nothing but cover Microsoft and Windows every week, and they cover a lot of this in detail, and so I'm a little bit more informed as far as Windows, Azure, and xCloud. And just last week they were saying xCloud and Azure are different things, yet they seem to be mixing the two pretty commonly. Next we have a game on Steam here called China Mao's Legacy. I don't know if this would fall under a pro or a con propaganda, for or against propaganda experience. $6.99, English and Russian, but not Chinese, oddly. So I assume this is probably a Russian troll, and it's a little odd to see a Russian troll game target China, but I think that's exactly what this is. And I could be totally wrong about this. I'm pretty sure China loves Chairman Mao, so I think they'd probably be so reverent of it they wouldn't even make a game around it, around them in the first place.
I see a vision in the flames.
But whatever this game is, it doesn't look fun or interesting, so we'll close it and leave it at that.
For justice.
Show me.
Next we have a game on Steam called Steambirds Alliance Beta, which is called a massive co-op. It looks like it's a top-down shoot-'em-up game. It looks like a mess visually, just a ton of flashing lights, something my eyes could never focus on. It's free to play, but it's basically an MMO too, with in-game purchases and such. And that certainly eliminates me from being interested in it. Next we have a game on Steam called Super Tennis Blast, which doesn't look terrible. If this has single player versus AI, this looks like a Wii Tennis clone style game. It doesn't look great, but it doesn't look terrible either. I'd give it a follow. $11.99. Says it has some single player experience. English only, 32 achievements. It might have too many achievements, quite frankly. Never heard of the developer. This deserves a follow. I would say, though, a lot of this also could be pre-bought, but it's done in a good way. Like this character customization stuff, you could probably pre-buy a lot of that assets, but doing it adds some flavor to your game, which could be pretty generic otherwise. We have certainly seen
The light protects me.
enough generic tennis games.
Show me.
For justice.
Reporting for duty.
So yeah, that'll get a follow. In what should be no surprise to anyone, Sonic the Hedgehog film has been delayed. Paramount Picture pushes it back as it overhauls the character design. It's kind of a bait and switch claim and offer that they're making here. They're saying they're going to fix the terrible 3D animation of Sonic, but they're really not going to fix any of the other problems that were pretty obvious and prevalent in the trailer. So fixing just one thing probably isn't enough to make it a good movie.
For justice.
So what I could only assume is that the Sonic the Hedgehog movie was probably greenlit to intentionally lose money, and now they're trying to lose even more money. Why do movie theaters want to intentionally lose money? It's so that they can take big write-offs from big successes from other films during that quarter. So what I would suspect is Paramount, I think, has some of the profits from
For justice.
the next Spider-Man movie. So maybe they're trying to lose money in the same quarter as Spider-Man, so they don't have to pay residuals to the Spider-Man actors and writers and everybody involved in that. Or maybe Paramount has some Disney movie that they're coming out with that they think is going to be a huge success, because Paramount might be a subsidiary of Disney. I'd have to research that. I know Disney does have a couple of basically shadow puppet corporations that they release movies on when they're not particularly designed to feel like Disney movies. If that is not the reason that they're delaying the movie, I don't know what the reason is then.
I fight.
Because you would really just
For
want to
justice.
put it out and get it out there and have people hate watch it because the trailer is fresh in people's minds. The more you delay that, the longer the experience is going to be.
Run! I will hold them off.
Next we have a game on Steam called Legion of the Storm. It looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter tank game, but they've chosen a terrible texture for the background, which is just incredibly visually busy. So I couldn't ever really play it. Yeah, it's a Asteroids, Robotron style clone game. Yeah, I could never play this with that floor texture. $1.99 English only for Legion of the Scorn.
Follow the rules.
Let's see.
For justice.
Well played. Reporting for duty.
Next we have a game on Steam called Border Strain, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter. We see a lot of these types of games. Very square and pixely in its graphic style. A lot of darkness being shown as a screenshot. Look, if I'm taking pictures of something, and I take 100 pictures and 50 of them are in darkness because I've just not set up and lit the image well enough, I don't present the dark pictures as something that I want to display prominently to any client. If I was a photographer, which I've never been, nor haven't had any interest, but the example makes sense. Certainly, you don't take dark screenshots and then put them on your website unless you just don't care on your Steam page. Border Strain is discounted to $10.39. It says it has English full audio. I question that. And yeah, I see nothing there. Quality. Let's go ahead and squelch this guy. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Plasticity, which seems to be... says it's a puzzle platformer. I'm seeing things in the trailer here. Looks somewhat interesting visually, but it kind of feels like a Limbo style game where it's gonna be, you start on the left and you make it to the right, or you start on the right and make it to the left. It's free to play. Alright, so at this visual quality and at that price, it's doable. Let's see, it's a student project also. So I love to show off student projects, so I'll put this on the follow list. This is, it says it has full audio English. So yeah, if you want to check out a student project called Plasticity, that is there.
Reporting for duty.
I suppose we are around the time when schools would be getting out and people would be graduating, so putting up student projects should happen around this time. Although it does seem like student projects do just show up on Steam at random times, whenever maybe the professor gets around to uploading it, or one of the students gets around to uploading it. And it's somewhat questionable who owns the copyright, because some colleges claim that they own the copyright to your theses and any work you do for them or as a project, which is disgusting but probably legal. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Green Man Gaming's birthday sale of 2019 is apparently happening. Apparently GTA games and more are on sale. Today is apparently day 8. I don't want to get too into the weeds. I don't buy games from Green Man Gaming. I don't know if they give you Steam codes or if you're just getting it to download like good old games. And TechRaptor works with them via affiliate links, and so yeah, they're making money off of this advertisement too. But if you're looking for a deal, there might be a deal to be found. GameIndustry.biz has an article here. The U.S. loot box bill receives bipartisan support. Now, when you say bipartisan support, that means you only really have to get one Republican and one Democrat in the United States to be top line signers of a bill, or supporters of a bill. Now, unfortunately, since this bill was first introduced and talked about, President Donald J. Trump has claimed he will not work with the Congress, the Senate, the House of Representatives at all until they stop investigating him. So he's basically holding all legislation hostage, including infrastructure bills, including funding bills for military, including everything. So this loot box bill, while it might be approved resoundingly by both the House and Senate and passed and sent to the President. The President may simply refuse to sign any bill whatsoever, and effectively pocket veto the bill until the end of the session of Congress, and he may just pocket veto everything, or he could veto it outright. And this is a flaw. The idea that the pocket veto exists is a flaw in the U.S. government system. It should be, if Congress comes out of session and the president has not proactively vetoed a law, then it gets passed anyways. In fact, there probably should be it could be as short as a week limit on the president to sign something, otherwise it becomes a law regardless. His veto power should be incredibly limited that way. But yeah, if he pocket vetoes something and Congress is not in session, they cannot, they can't really override it. All they can do is submit the legislation again and again and again, and he can just ignore it again and again and again. And thus, when the two of the three parts of the government don't work together, the government doesn't get anything done. And so that's a bit of U.S. government education there, to say that this loot box bill might get approved, but it might get vetoed. If it gets directly vetoed and Congress still is in session, then they would need a 2/3 majority of the House and the Senate to overturn it. The loot box bill might be the perfect bill for that to happen. But yeah. There are probably some problems with this bill as it's written, and this probably is just a first step to better legislation in the next decade as far as loot boxes, particularly loot boxes targeted towards children, which are a problem. But all of the U.S. government's functions are dysfunctional, to say the least, at the moment, so it's unlikely a lot will happen. There's another story saying that there's considering a 25% raise on video game consoles from China. This is basically an increase of what I believe is the current 15% tariff of almost everything to 25% tariff of almost everything from China to America. It's not specifically singling out video game consoles, it's everything. And these tariffs are being paid by basically U.S. consumers, not the Chinese companies, and it is expected to cost, if these tariffs go into place, it's expected to cost the average family $850 a year. So can you come up with an extra $850 to purchase the things you're already purchasing with getting no extra value from it? Not really. Most people are not going to be happy about that. Now, the reason for the tariffs, debatably the right reasons, but the way the tariffs are being implemented, debatably the wrong way.
I'm almost out of cards.
And it's really just a game of chicken. Moving closer to video game news, we have another one of these VR games. It's literally the exact same VR experience. The only difference is this is a different character from ReZero in VR, where she's walking around. I assume they have very few animations that they do, and they just cycle through the different animations, like so many of these VR experiences. This is also $19.99, and it goes to show that the anime ReZero is very popular, and the characters from ReZero are very popular, that you could have 2 different versions of a VR only game sell for $20, which $20 is pretty expensive for even a big tier VR game, and this is probably less than 5 minutes of actual entertainment. Let's see. Full Japanese audio and Chinese and English interface, subtitles. Let's see.
Follow the rules.
For justice.
Just keep on playing.
Move quickly.
Next, we have this game on Steam called Church Era, which looks like it is a RPG, but it's moving so fast in this trailer. It's not like I'm sped up the video. It's like they sped up the video, which isn't a terrible thought for a lot of slow-moving games. But as I'm looking at the trailer here, seems like you're running a church as a resource management RPG. You get little bits of conversations, but there's no real fights or anything like that. So you're just gonna see a lot of it, or, well, it looked like there was a fight there, but it was just kind of a simulated fight that happened really fast. This is an early access game. English is not supported. It's discounted to $12.79, and it's traditional Chinese. I do not trust the Chinese to get any church-based game, or particularly a Christianity-based game, which is what this seems to be based off of, is like an old school Roman Catholic church. I don't think that they're going to get all of the nuances of something like that right, and this dangerously comes close to being a troll game that is attacking people's religion from an officially atheistic state like China. So it's probably more trouble than it's worth to make a game like this, particularly if you're selling it to Chinese people who, I don't know why you'd be selling it to Chinese people, considering how Chinese people are severely discouraged to be religious also. And I don't know how much further you can really go into that. I think they're mostly encouraged to be ignorant of religions and uninterested in religions, not particularly encouraged to insult religions or parody them. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Valve highlights the top 20 Steam games for April of 2019. What's weird is that they haven't done this, I think, for several months. So they seem to be very infrequent on highlighting top 20 games. Probably when some of the top 20 games are games that are adult in nature, and they don't want to admit that, because frankly, some months that's exactly the case. Let's see. You have to click for the full list. This is on their blog. I guess also they probably wanted to get past the previous thing on their blog, which was talking about positive review bombs and how they weren't going to do anything about it. So they put out this. So here's the top 20. Totally Accurate Battle Simulator. Okay, that's big and popular. Super Dragon Ball Heroes, which is the card game. That's obviously going to be popular. Islanders, a minimalistic city builder. I haven't even heard of this, so I totally missed that one. Mars Tactical Base Defense. That's one I didn't see. Supraland. That's one I didn't see. The Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney trilogy. That's obviously very popular as it being a port of a popular game. Vacation Simulator is a VR only game. Zenkai Zero Last Beginning. That kind of is an adult game, dungeon crawler game, and it was in the top 20. So I don't see how you don't point that out. Pathway is another one I don't recall. Weedcraft Incorporated is another one I missed. Staxel. And One Finger Death Punch 2 is a sequel to a popular game. Forger was big. Pagan Online was big. Katana Zero was big. These are the top 20 sellers for April. It's not really big. It's not AAA titles. Driftland, The Magical Revival, Paper Dolls, Original, Mortal Kombat 11 was big. Imperator Rome, and Mordhau was big. So let's jump into another game. Even though I've played all my secrets, like what do I think I can win with? Let's try Warlock. And I opened all these pictures in a new link, and they were just pictures. Darn it. I thought they'd be links to the games, because that would only be logical.
You asked for it.
Your soul
There's
shall be mine.
something certainly to be said, though. When you have games like Weedcraft, when you have Zenkai Zero, which is a Japanese dungeon crawler, when you have Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, which is just kind of a joke game, like what people want and what AAA game developers think people want are very different, at least on Steam, at least on PC. And sure, for the month of April, not a lot of good AAA games came out. And when a good AAA game did come out, it often was built around the narrative of it being a mediocre game at best, and most of the AAA games that have come out this entire year have been very mediocre. So, yeah, it all makes a little sense.
Crystallize.
Let's see. Moving on, though, TechRaptor has an article, grab a copy of Jalopy for free in the Humble Spring Sale Encore. Jalopy is not a terrible game to get for free. It was probably a little too expensive last time I looked at it. It's reviewed pretty well by video game journalists. So if you can get a free copy, take advantage of that.
Stop copying me! Stop copying me!
Crystallize.
Let's see. We've still got a few games here to talk about. We have a game on Steam called Splitgate Arena Warfare. I believe I had already put this game on my follow list. It's free to play. It's multiplayer only. Maybe I didn't put it on the follow list. This also, I think it came out in early access just a couple months ago, and so now it's either out of early access,
So many possibilities.
and the free-to-play part doesn't include the Founders Edition part. It is mostly positive. The problem here is that this is just kind of a no-name developer, so unless some big streamers started playing this game and really liking it, because this really is just Unreal Tournament with portals, I don't see how you call it much of anything else. So yeah, Splitgate Arena Warfare is out there. It's free to play to start with. If you're interested, I can't put it on the follow list because it's a multiplayer only game, and I don't play multiplayer only games. was spending a lot of time killing all my minions. So this and this.
Why me? Why me?
Crystallize.
And the turn. Next we have a game on Steam called Interstellar Transport Company. This is one of those 4X games or trading, space trading games. I guess it's not a 4X game. It's just a space trading game. Visually it looks fine, it's just not my type of game. It's $22.49 discounted and full audio in English. It does say it has some single player and multiplayer and co-op, and yep, just not my type of game.
I wonder.
Doesn't look terrible though.
Put this apple on your head.
My shield for Argus.
Next we have a game on Steam called Spikes Are Dangerous, which is a Super Meat Boy platformer that is going for depth when you really don't need depth. It's kind of the perfect example of why you don't need a 3D perspective. There's just a ridiculous amount of garbage on the screen in this screenshot. You cannot focus your eyes on anything. It's just way too many textures, way too many objects. Just not necessary. And rainbow colors, congratulations. Just visually unappealing throughout the entirety of it. It's $9.99 English in the interface. It's like easily ignored game. Right. Okay, what do I want to do?
Hey, catch!
Into the breach.
Almost out of
Time's up. Let's do this.
There we go.
At least I have chicken.
Tech Raptor has this hype article. KAO, is that cow? The Kangaroo Round 2 bounces on the Steam June 1st. I've never heard of this game at all, so I have no idea why they're promoting it, other than they probably were paid to promote it in some way. Like, this looks like a Nintendo 64 Conker's clone. Let's see. Cow the Kangaroo was a Dreamcast platformer released back in 2001. So a sequel to a unknown, like really, really old and long since forgotten game.
Flash fails. Try crystal.
In the turn, yes.
out of time.
So I guess there might be a little bit of historical reason to mention that, but it's an oddity at best. Gamatsu has an article here. Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet Complete Edition for Switch launches August 8th in Japan and August 9th in Americas and Europe. So at this point, you're getting a complete edition for the Switch of Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet, which Fatal Bullet's kind of old, and that season of Sword Art Online is kind of done with.
So many possibilities.
This. That. And that.
Starlight.
Crystallize.
Yeah, I think I can win next
My
turn.
hand is too full.
The Sword Art Online series, in particular, the games, went in a lot of different directions because it's people in VR headsets in different VR games throughout as the series went on, instead of just focusing on a Tolkien-esque fantasy world in one VR game, which is what the dot hack games did in a generation previously. All the dot hack games and all the dot hack animes were set in the same world and had some kind of thematic consistency to it. I feel like Sword Art Online becomes very weird as a whole since it keeps changing its themes, and even the name is Sword Art Online. There's very little sword arts, as in fencing or sword swinging ability in a game like Fatal Bullet, where it's mostly gun shooting. There you go. Moving on, TechRaptor has a Layers of Fear 2 review, Lights, Camera, Boo. So I did not like Layers of Fear 1. The DLC for Layers of Fear 1 was a little bit better. It seems like Layers of Fear 2 is going to be more focused around stage play and theater than painting. So that opens a different theme to focus on. But most of Layers of Fear 1, in my opinion, was really just a developer developing something that was extremely simplistic and full of jump scares, and not particularly a good quality horror game or a good quality game, because you're just walking through a very linear house and getting shown scary things that frankly weren't that scary. One more game. TechRaptor gave Layers of Fear 2 an 8.0 grade. They say Layers of Fear 2 is an unnerving and memorable descent into madness that reminds us of why Bloober Team, the name, that's the team that made Layers of Fear, are the masters of first-person psychological horror. I would argue they're not, but maybe they just don't scare me and they scare everybody else. That is very possible. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if I'm just immune to scary games. I've never really been afraid of any scary movies or games. I like to watch them and enjoy them, but they don't scare me. The pros are it's unsettling and unpredictable. It has stellar atmospheric lighting. It has a great score, and it has a character, I guess, named Tony Todd. Cons are infrequent audio mixing issues. So, okay. Well,
protects me.
I suppose if somebody was to gift me Layers of Fear 2, which somebody may have gifted me Layers of Fear 1, quite frankly, it's hard to keep that straight in my head, I would cover it. Layers of Fear 1 wasn't terrible. The DLC was better. I wouldn't want to play Layers of Fear the number of times it seemed like you needed to play it to get all the endings, because it felt like there was 2 or 3 different endings or 3 different things that could have happened in different ways throughout the game. Moving on, TechRaptor has a rumor here, at least they're labeling it a rumor. A Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic movie is reportedly being written. That makes sense, although questionable how much of a movie called Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic has to be written would be similar. How similar would that be to the actual game? Because if you were just porting what happened, the events of the Knights of the Old Republic games to movie format, there's very little writing I think you would need to do. But if you're just setting a movie in the same time period with somewhat similar events as KOTOR, then then that might be a very different experience. And you definitely are running a 50-50 coin flip here that people will not enjoy this movie if it comes out, even if they were Knights of the Old Republic fans. Because I wouldn't be surprised if Star Wars fans are a little picky. That would be right in line with every complaint anyone has ever had with a Star Wars fan. This game is tagged nudity, so let me just double check the screenshots. Alright, well. Next we have the game Dollhouse out. Now this game Dollhouse has been teasing itself for months, only really showing a image like this. And it's a horror adventure action noir game, and it's tagged nudity, like I said, and it's suffering from dark screenshot syndrome. So I don't know where to go with this. Like, I expect I will see some bigger people play this. They want $26.99 discounted. I'll put this on the follow list, see if people buy it and play it. Apparently, critical bug fixes are on the way, so the game was released in a poor state. There is a very, very good chance that what is going to occur here is we are going to run into a game that is not polished and not really worth playing, but managed to get enough coverage to get probably more sales and sell at a higher price. I vaguely recall that Dollhouse may have been a Kickstarter game also, so that could change the considerations somewhat.
Job's done.
Because if it's really expensive now, but most people got it via Kickstarter cheaper, then it might get better reviews than it deserves at that price point. Next we have an article from Gamma Sutra. Get a job, Disbelief is hiring a senior programmer. So if you want to be a senior programmer for Disbelief out of Cambridge, Massachusetts or Chicago, Illinois, that game is, that company is hiring. I have on my this is probably giving out more information than I'd like to, but on my resume I have some experience with Linux programming and using Linux in general, not so much programming the core kernel of Linux or anything like that, but I've tried to learn some of that even. And that is a type of job that is rarely wanted, but also when it is wanted, there's so few people that can actually do it. I got earlier this morning not one but two people that are recruiters trying to place me in the exact same job. They're saying, hey, we need you to work this job, and then I get another email from a completely different recruiting agency and a completely different person saying, hey, we need you for this job. Of course they don't mean they need me personally, they just need somebody who meets the qualifications. So
Let's do this.
that's kind of funny. I don't know why I told that story particularly. I forgot why I was telling it.
Thank you.
And there's nothing wrong with a company hiring multiple recruiters to fill positions. Although I will warn people against going through recruiting agencies, because very often recruiting agencies are 100% focused on putting you in jobs that are either temporary, even if they claim they aren't, or jobs that are so much a revolving door that you're not going to have a good long-term work experience for that company. It's not unheard of for somebody to be told they've been hired on permanently, and then in less than 30 days, just as a nature of habit, be laid off and replaced with somebody else. So you have to be cautious, but then also you're usually pretty desperate to find a job when you're looking for a job. And currently I'm not actively looking for a job, although I might take an offer or two since I'm acting as a YouTuber, but resumes are out there in case some dream position came around. Alright, let's just focus on finishing the news so we don't have a ton left. We've got a game here called Flux, which is a hack and slash style game. Seems like it's based on some timing too, so for like a score. This doesn't look so bad that it doesn't deserve a follow. It's $6.99, English only. Yeah, it looks like it might be good. It might not. The screen is a little bit of a concern here. There's a lot happening on the screen that could be distracting. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Farewell Planet. Let's see, it's $4.99. It's English and Japanese. So is this a weird, surreal Japanese game around text? See, it seems like there's either a creature sitting on top of another creature that has 6 legs. Yeah. It's all just scribbles. It says it's in English, but I'm not saying anything in English. Planet with nobody on it, a village of machines who thought they were human. The last machine still alive. A child borrows the bodies of other villagers and says farewell to each of them by fulfilling their last wish. Yeah, that seems like this might be interesting. It's $4.99 though, and it might also be 5 minutes of content. This seems like a weird Japanese indie game, and I'm willing to put a follow on it and see if people are interested in it. Next, TechRaptor has an article here. Noir adventure Nightcall provides an influx of intrigue. It looks slightly interesting, I guess. As it feels like a point-and-click adventure. It's on Steam, so let's see what Steam has to say about it. Now, this is running straight into dark screenshot syndrome, too, being black and white. And, yep, it's hard to tell. I'll give it a follow. It's not even out yet, so that's why there are no reviews on it. It's English and French, and noir filmmaking is somewhat from French filmmaking, so that makes sense. TechRaptor is being slow today to load its pages. That's kind of the worst problem with TechRaptor, is that their servers are just slow. Because I use this plugin to save RAM called the Great Suspender on Chrome. It suspends tabs and saves them and says you don't need to use all the RAM to load this page right now. Nobody's going to look at it for a while. But then when I unsuspend it, it hits the server and takes forever. TechRaptor has this article. Uncooperative multiplayer shooter Vicious Circle has been announced. The idea of an uncooperative multiplayer sounds like every other multiplayer game out there. Let's face it, even unless you have a really good group of friends that are really good at playing multiplayer shooters, you're probably going to get some rando on your team at some point who is uncooperative, to say the least. So building a game where you're not cooperating, which is, I don't know how you don't just call that a one for all or battle royale style game, because that's really all it is. It's non-team based gameplay. So they're trying to be cheeky with a different description of something that's existed for quite a while. Player versus player. Next we have a game on Steam called Planet Jump 2. You can pretty well guess by these graphics that this is a garbage, low effort game. We don't need to go any further than that. It's $2.99, English and Russian. Yep. The condemnation of Russian game developers is pretty bad. Most Russian language games are not good. Unless it's Russian and several other languages. If it's just English and Russian or Russian only, it's typically bad. Here's where we have to reset the days since we last talked about Gearbox and Randy Pitchford. GameIndustry.biz has the article. Gearbox didn't actually file a grievance against its former legal counsel. So Wade Callender, who is the former legal counsel, has confirmed that Borderlands Studio has not followed through on its threat. This was what happened is Wade Callender, in a lawsuit against Randy Pitchford and Gearbox, made some rather salacious allegations that are for the most part proven and confirmed to be accurate, that Randy Pitchford left a USB thumb drive with corporate secrets and what he believed was underage squirt porn at a Medieval Times, and it was found by an employee at Medieval Times and then returned to Gearbox, and then I think the evidence was destroyed, so they tampering with evidence claim here too, if there was an actual crime committed. But he said all of this in his legal filing and complaint, which seems like something you can kind of do, but you could certainly file a grievance, particularly when a lawyer files something salacious in their initial filings like this, but they didn't. I'm not sure if maybe Gearbox barely even has a legal team, or perhaps their legal team was smart enough to say, hey, if you file a grievance on any of this, and then they're going to just bring it out in the news and talk about it even more, and it's bad for you, and you won't win your grievance anyways because it'll be proven that everything he said is true. Now, I don't 100% swear that Wade Callender isn't the bad guy. This almost certainly, if I was to guess, is a case of Randy Pitchford is a very bad guy in the story. Randy Pitchford makes himself to look like the bad guy in every story about him. He's just a terrible representative of anything, let alone a video game company. But I wouldn't be surprised if the accusations against Wade Callender are somewhat true or proven to be somewhat true. Gearbox is claiming, and Randy Pitchford is claiming, that Wade Callender stole money and used a corporate credit card for Gearbox inappropriately, and that he got loans that were approved but didn't pay back those loans. All of this, I think, definitely comes around the idea that Randy Pitchford and probably Wade Callender and probably the voice actor for Gearbox were all very friendly and chummy with each other to begin with, and they were very fast and loose with what was ethical to do at the company and what wasn't. And then Randy Pitchford did something like trying to sell Gearbox, which allegedly is one of the things he's trying to do, either was trying to do or still is trying to do, or he did something else to irritate people. The accusations on Wade Callender is that Randy Pitchford made fun of him for being a Christian, which is certainly not going to play well in a Texas court of law, and certainly not going to play well as far as discrimination and hostile work environments in the United States, like singling out people for their religious beliefs. Not gonna work well at all. So yeah, it feels like Randy pissed these people off and then they left, and maybe they left and didn't pay a loan they should have paid back, or something out like that. That being said, the facts from the speculation are hard to get separated in this ever-growing story of Gearbox in the middle of Borderlands 3 coming out. Let's see. Calendar told Polygon, in response, the State Bar confirmed it. No grievance was ever filed by those who were publicly threatening such nonsense back in January of 2019. Gearbox and its legal representatives did not respond to requests for comment from Game Industry Biz. So yeah, they're not going to file that grievance, but they still, I assume, are still fighting the lawsuits, and it'll just, legal actions take a long time, so there may not be any wrap up. And I frankly wouldn't be surprised if Randy Pitchford somehow is driven out of his own privately owned company of Gearbox, and 5-10 years later he wins the lawsuit against Calendar and gets a small amount of money, but it doesn't really matter. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if Wade Callender gets a judgment against him and doesn't have the money to ever pay it back. So it would be a hollow victory, as in most lawsuits are, is you get a judgment against somebody, but you don't actually get any money because they don't actually have any money. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Coast Team, which looks like an asset flip first-person shooter. The fact that you have guns, but then it's mostly medieval art buildings around here tells me these aren't the same. These aren't designed uniquely for one game. The fact that the character is on the left side of the screen is weird for a third-person perspective. Yeah, there's just no polish here, nothing that looks interesting. It's 99 cents, English, full audio, it says. Seems like there's no texture on this character at all, it's just yellow. So yeah, that's not making it to it. Gamma Sutra has the same article, we don't need to talk about that. This game is tag nudity, so can I show this off? I can show off some of these screenshots, but not all of them, I think, and stay family friendly. So, next we have on Steam Hentai Arena, hentai being the Japanese word for pervert battle royale. It's pre-bought assets of anime girls shooting guns. A lot of screenshots has this anime girl, and this might be really the only anime girl in here, in her underwear, and there's some other costumes they're showing off. It's early access, they're selling it for 59 cents. Bunch of languages they say they have free support for. It's got 4 achievements. Don't get suckered into these low effort games, clearly. Don't fall for these. Gamatsu has an article. Gus teases a new project to be announced May 28th. Update. This seems to be a very blurry screenshot. So The Atelier series developer has opened a teaser website for a new project to be announced May 28th. May 28th due issue of Dengeki PlayStation will have a feature story on Gust's new project, including details and an interview with the producer. Seems like there's a dragon that will be involved in it. So yeah, probably a new Atelier game. If it's a new IP, that would be slightly surprising. But yeah. Next, we have a game on Steam called Beijing Courier Simulator, which is a low-effort game, clearly RPG Maker looking game. It's $3.34 discounted. English is not supported, just Chinese. I don't know why anybody would want to play a game where you're simulating a job, but particularly I don't know why a Chinese person who very possibly could have this job would want to play a game that's simulating a job. It almost comes off as, oh no, this is training material that we've just made in the form of a video game. And the animation of these characters are clearly either stolen from other games or bought from other games because they're all over the map in animation style. It's ridiculous. Like, let's see. Next we have on Steam Vampire and Monsters Hidden Object game. So we covered 2 hidden object games. Mostly I'm skipping a lot of hidden object games. This one looks like the resolution might be a little lower and the animation style might be a little worse. Seems like it is designed for cell phones because you're panning around in a 360 image. It's $3.59 discounted though, so you're getting quite the discount, but it's again probably a cell phone port. Probably not worth publishing. The idea of a 360 spin on a hidden object game kind of makes sense, but in the real world, it ties it to the real world more, but it also makes playing a hidden object game a lot more of a pain in the butt, because you could easily be staring at the screen for hours and just the object you're looking for not even be there. GameIndustry.biz has the same article. We talked about this before. All of Telltale games to be pulled from Good Old Games. 8 more series have to be removed, but 2K is working on getting Tales from the Borderlands reinstated to digital storefronts. I imagine Tales from the Borderlands is probably the only game that anybody is going to work very hard to get on for sale on storefronts, where everybody else is going to take their sweet time and do it whenever they feel like it because of the licensing issues. Like, Telltale going out of business really was just a nightmare waiting to happen. Next, we have a game on Steam that is called Ballade 2: The Celestial Promise. This is clearly a Chinese visual novel or Japanese visual novel. It's not widescreen. I would tend to guess this one's Japanese because the screenshots show more characters. There's a variety of at least 3 different characters there. English is not supported. $5.99. I've been talking so long, I'm gonna have to drink some water. 1 second. Nope, it's Chinese, not Japanese. They tricked me on that one. Yeah, nothing there interesting though that would make me want to put it on the wish list. I'm gonna mute myself and cough really loud. Yeah, trust me, you do not want to hear that. There are 2 types of coughs I can make. One that will scare the hair off a monkey, and one that sounds somewhat human. And frankly, my throat is probably not well suited for talking as much as I do as a YouTuber. Next we have a game on Steam called Into the Core. And this looks like it's just an asset flip game. 3D of some sort, platforming. It's free. Let's see. It doesn't say it's a student project though. English. By the way, scare the hair off a monkey may be a new phrase I just invented. I've never heard that before. Yeah, this looks like garbage. Nothing more to say there. We only have like 5 more games, so I'm trying to just burn through this. We have a game here called Factory Coin Mining, which clearly is just a Satisfactory clone. Also maybe trying to imply Bitcoin mining. This doesn't look terrible, but I don't know why I would want to play this. But let's see. Early access, $13.99. Has this developer developed anything else? One game that is negatively reviewed, then a ton of DLC. Yeah. That does not give me any reason to trust this game. The other thing they have here is Flywings Fly Simulator, and that's a very different style of game. So yeah, I think if I was going to play a factory game, I'd play Satisfactory way before I would play this. So I'm not going to even put it on the follow list. If it turns out to be amazingly popular and people start talking about it, that would be a different thing. Next, we have a game on Steam called The Toy Maker's Apprentice, which looks like it's a VR asset dungeon horror game. Seems like the visual quality is very randomized. It's $9.74. This really does just look like a PlayStation 1 level graphics. Now watching this trailer, no, I don't think so. I don't think that looks quality enough. So skip that. Here's that story from GameIndustry.biz. US considers 25% tariff on game consoles. Now, this is a proposed import tax on essentially all products coming from China as part of the escalating trade dispute. Now, here's the question. How many consoles are made in China and have to be made in China? Let's be serious here. If Xbox Ones are made in China, the parts could be shipped at a much cheaper tariff rate to a place like Mexico or India or any other third world country where you can just have people assemble things, and then the final product could come out of that other country. So US Xbox Ones, PlayStation 4s, Switches, none of those as final products have to come out of China. And this is the problem with tariffs in general, is that there is no really chain of ownership of parts. So sure, 99.9% of the assembly could be done inside of China, or all of it could be done in China. It could be sold then to India and then brought in from India or Mexico or Canada or any other country to the United States. So yeah, that's questionable. Tariffs are deep and complicated things, and the bigger fear, and this really is kind of more fear-mongering, would have been to accurately depict this article and say US considers 25% tariff on essentially all products from China. instead of labeling it game consoles specifically, because that's not a full accurate description. That's yellow journalism. That's just propaganda. It's true, but it's not telling the full truth of the story, and there is a difference in a lot of cases. Moving on, we have a game on Steam, Nelly Kutalot Spoonbeaks Ahoy HD. This is a game I believe was already on my wish list because it was a point-and-click adventure, and so I guess I don't know if it was on my follow list. It was probably on the follow list, not my wish list. This video is odd to have this redheaded guy, who I assume worked on the game, hold this picture and then do 3D CGI or green screen images on it instead of just showing off gameplay footage completely. It's $1.99, so it's not really even asking that much. I don't believe that the developer has another version of this game, although maybe there is a non-HD version of this that had already come out. And yeah, there's a $20 game here named Nelly Kutalot, so I guess I'd have to do some research on that. But yeah, this should be on the follow list or the wish list. At that price, it's cheap, but if I have to buy the previous game for $20, it's not so cheap. So you have to be careful. Is this the sequel? Next, we have a game on Steam, and this is interesting. I want to jump back to the beginning of this. Sci-Fi, S-Y-F-Y, or Sci-Fi, as it should be pronounced, presents a game called 1111. You can see this is NBC Universal and Universal Studios Interactive publishing this. Now, I don't watch... Well, actually, I do kind of watch a couple of shows on Sci-Fi these days, although for a very long time I wasn't. So I have no idea what this is supposed to be, but there was this game that Sci-Fi had, and they released it a couple of times, where there were aliens on Earth working together, several different species of in a post-apocalyptic Earth. And I'm wondering if this is that same game reskinned and attempted to be sold for a third time. I don't know. I can't really tell. This seems like it requires VR, which would then mean that there's some new element to this. The idea that Sci-Fi would be the foundation to bring a lot of sci-fi games to Steam is laughable, because Sci-Fi is known best for decades upon decades of starting good shows and canceling them and not giving them enough time, and it really changing what they define sci-fi as. A lot of times you're not even watching sci-fi movies on Sci-Fi. So at best case scenario, I'll put this on the follow list just to see what happens here. I can't recommend it though. It is the first game under this developer. It is the only game under this publisher. And I don't think this is the beginning of a lot of things like that. Frankly, you'd probably be better off not saying Sci-Fi presents at the beginning of a game like this. I feel like the name of that show was called Descent or something. It was a bunch of aliens outside of Seattle, I think. Moving on, we have a game, Mortello y Filemon El Sofeto Automaco, which is does that mean the yellow car? in Spanish. I could probably try and translate that if I wanted to, but there's a yellow car in the background. This is a series of Spanish-based point-and-click adventures. I've seen this animation style before. Unfortunately, English is not supported. There is one game in this series that English is supported, but not all of it, so it's in a weird position. So it's Spain Spanish only, and that certainly is weird to have a game series where the Spanish is the main language. So yeah, this previous one does have interface and subtitles in English, but I believe the first one in the series which I think is this one, English is not supported again. And I assume these are old games getting re-released. So 2 out of 3 of these games not making it to the can't be on the follow list, which pretty much means I can't play any of the games in the series, because that would be silly to say play just one game that is in English and then none of the other games are in English. And that brings me to the Humble Bundle. There's no new Humble Bundle to talk of today, and then that brings me back to my Twitter feed, and I'll just scroll down my Twitter feed and see if there's anything new to mention since today is Friday. Pretty good Friday stream, and for all my whining and complaining, it does feel like YouTube has decided to change their algorithm again, and I'm starting to get more people on streams watching videos again. It feels like maybe more people are talking in the comment section and chat, and that might be promoting the game a little bit more too, promoting the stream a little bit more. So the only thing that I'm really dropping the ball with right now is just breaking up episodes. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Remember, the Steam Summer Sale is coming up pretty soon. That'd be a great time to do that. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.